Good evening.
All right, welcome. This is the School District of Prescott Board of Education regular meeting. I'll call this meeting to order, section 1983 Wisconsin statutes. Our next item is to adopt the agenda. Are there any changes?
There are no changes from the administration.
We'll need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Move on to item 3, Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Chair.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move on to item 4, recognition of visitors. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to be recognized? And just state your name and residence or municipality, please. Thank you.
My name is Craig Tice. I live in rural Prescott. The question that I guess I'm bringing to the board here is previously at the meeting before where we discussed the 2-hour early release. I had asked the question of why you guys simply asked parents if they were for or against this. At that time, we were told we didn't ask it this time because we need this to be passed, and there's a good chance that it wouldn't be passed if this was asked to the parents, because you guys may or may not have support for that. Again, this is going through again, and you guys are putting a blind eye to the fact that you say you're collaborating with parents. You're not collaborating with people. You're telling them what you're going to do and saying, okay, well, we've made our decision. We're going to do this, but maybe we'll give you guys a little bit of grace as far as which day may or may not work. That isn't helpful. So my question for you is, why have you guys not simply posed the simple question of whether or not parents are for or against what you guys are laying forward as just a point blank question?
Yeah, I mean, we do have an item of information discussion on it. I believe we're going to be talking about it at that point, but I think that'll be up for discussion at that point.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So I mean, we typically don't get into a conversation or dialogue back and forth during the public comment section, but we appreciate that.
Okay. I'll bring it up here in
It
a
will
little bit.
come up in the info discussion. Thank you.
Taslin Magnuson from Prescott. I have one kid in Prescott High School and one that finished early and will graduate in the spring. I've spent the last 6 months studying school board policies and school boards across the country for the day job. The asks in front of the board tonight about early release is what professional educators are asking across the country. And believe me, we're talking like hundreds of districts. They all want time to coordinate and collaborate, time to do the jobs they've devoted their lives to, time to do right by the kids. Taking off my new professional policy nerd hat, I want to speak as a parent. My kids do better and always have when they feel supported, upheld, and encouraged in their pursuit of learning. That happens when teachers feel supported and that they have the time and space to do their jobs well. I'm not a teacher, nor do I want to be, as the pandemic time cemented that for me. But I put my money on the teachers, always. I know the board will receive information about the impact on families tonight. I imagine that early release will be challenging for some families, and I hope and I know that the board will do its best to support those families. However, I really think it's time to trust teachers and administrators whose job it is to educate the kids when they tell us what they need and so they can do right by our children's needs. It's not my job, it's their job. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else going to be recognized?
You know, it's okay to question before.
All right, we're going to move on to item 5, good news from around the district.
Yes, and tonight I just wanted to start with our student representative, but also acknowledge that next Friday she will be walking across the stage and receiving a diploma from Prescott Public Schools and Prescott High School. In addition, we as a board wanted to acknowledge that and have a small gift there for you. And you are still welcome in June, should you want to, but we wanted to make sure that we acknowledge both your graduation and the time that you served representing the student body. So Shay, thank you, and your turn.
Thanks, Jay.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we are pretty much wrapping up the year. Student council is. We're preparing for next year. We have our election coming up on Tuesday. Mallory Bowles and I will be taking ballots for those. And then we are also talking about topics that we want to get going on early next August. Obviously, I won't be a part of that, but for next year's student council. And then just in another side of things, I'm really excited. The Inclusivity Club had a Sexual Assault Awareness Day last month, and it went really well. We had a discussion panel that a lot of students stayed for, and I think it made a really big impact on our students. And Mallory Bowles, Shelby Sizemore, and I will be speaking to the middle school about the same topic tomorrow. So,
Thank you. And our administrative team.
Josh Figge, Prescott High School principal. I have a lot, and I'm speaking for, I'm going to try and cover Mr. Caudill's things too, because he's at an event tonight. So I want to say first off, because I don't think we had this information at our last board meeting, the forensics team earned the Excellence in Speech Award from the state of Wisconsin. It's something they've earned before, and I believe it's the 7th time that they've earned it. To earn this award, you need to be in the top 5% of Wisconsin schools in forensics to earn that accolade. So that's huge. It's like our dance team and some of our other state-bound teams that do it year after year. So it's a huge congratulations to the group of students who worked very, very hard this year, and then obviously to Coach Sponholtz and Coach Bowles. We had Tuck Everlasting that took place this past month under the direction of Director Speltz, and an amazing cast of students who are up here. Hopefully people had an opportunity to come in and see it. So very well done to the students who put on those performances back to back to back to back. This is the part I hope I don't botch because it's sports, and so there's a lot here. Softball are the team conference champs for the Middle Border Conference this year. Yesterday, our track team traveled, and I believe the information I've got is Aiden Russell was a conference champ in high jump. Kendra Ogilvie, Kennedy Braun, Ms. Severson, and Ms. Butterworth were the conference champions in the 4x100, and the girls varsity track team took 3rd overall at the Middle Border Conference. So that's huge for them, and congratulations to all those athletes. And then Tyler Ryder had an amazing showing as a freshman golfer this year, I believe, and this is where I hope I don't botch it, but I believe he took 3rd in the conference. Yes, and Shay is nodding, so we're going to make that, stamp that as gold. We did hold our awards night last week, and we're able to recognize a lot of students during that time, our Laude students, and then recognize students who had earned scholarships, both local scholarships, national scholarships, and collegiate scholarships. And we have an amazingly talented group of seniors this year, so congratulations to them. Speaking of our seniors, we are 7 days away from graduation, and so just a big congratulations to our seniors who have worked not only the past year, but the past 4 years, the past 13 years of their career. I'm proud to announce this year, as we switch to our Laude system, we went through a very rigorous process to select our graduation speakers. So in the past, our top GPA earners were automatically given the honor of speaking at graduation. This year, I would say it was doubly, triply rigorous to be selected and given the honor and distinction of being a graduation speaker. They had to apply for it. They had to submit outlines of what they would propose as a speech, an outline, and then they had to do an audition video if they made it past the first round, showing off their speaking skills. And our staff committee chose 2 students who rose to the top, and I'm proud to announce that Mallory Bowles and Shay Stenruse are 2 students who will be speaking as honorary graduation speakers. In addition to those 2, Miss Anna Tomley will also be speaking because she is our student council president. And because we were adding some new things this year, one of the things that we thought would be really good, and I worked with our summa cum laude students, was to have a keynote speaker selected from the staff. And so our summa cum laude students got together with me, and they brainstormed values and messages and traits that they would want a keynote speaker to embody. And then we went through the staff list, and they went off my process a little bit, but they selected somebody that they felt would honor them with a message and embodied the values that they hold most dear. So I'm really proud to announce that Mr. Jeff Ryan was selected as this year's commencement keynote speaker for the class of 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Figge.
Michael Kosmalski Intermediate School. The Malone Parent Committee had a carnival in late April that's held at the intermediate school. It was a huge success. I just want to thank all the families who donated their or volunteered some time and the items for the silent auction, and then those that came and bid on those silent auction items. It was great to have a full house of families, and MPC was able to raise over $6,500 for our schools. So thank you for that. 5th grade graduation is coming up next week, Thursday, the 26th at 1 o'clock in the intermediate school gym. Look forward to seeing all of our families there for this milestone event. And finally, from teaching and learning, the state testing season is finally wrapped up. AP testing is nearly done. I want to thank Kyle Flaherty and Andy Holland for all their behind-the-scenes tech work that they did to make this a very smooth testing season for our students and staff.
Hi, Sarah Dusick, Principal, Malone Elementary. I'd like to start off by thanking the Malone Parent Committee and a couple other businesses like Patax, Prescott Dental, Afton Apple, and Twisted Oak for showering our staff with appreciation during Staff Appreciation Week a couple weeks ago. They were spoiled throughout the week with yummy treats. It was awesome. Also, we had our 3rd through 5th grade and our K2 music programs in May. It was awesome to be back in a gym with families and performing for them again. There was an army of people who helped with those productions, but I'd like to give a shout out to Faith Seward, who put on 2 awesome shows. This was her first time doing a program by herself, as she just graduated last year, and she did a phenomenal job. I would also like to just recognize the outdoor classroom space that they are creating at Malone Elementary. Carrie Sizemore has been working hard to get volunteers to the courtyard space at Malone to build that outdoor classroom, and a lot of things happened this spring. And it looks awesome. Students are out there all the time using that space for outdoor learning. And then we are looking forward to our kindergarten graduation. That's going to be happening next Friday, the 27th at 1:15 here in this auditorium.
Thank you, Mr. Dusick.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm going to take, May has been a busy month at the middle school, and there's lots and lots of great things that have happened, from Nora Bowles, who was up there, to a variety of other things that are taking place. But I want to just take a minute to congratulate Miss Diana Lee and Miss Brianna Hepfler for 2 of the most dynamic middle school, both choir and band concerts that I have been able to be a part of in my 5 years at the middle school. Both of them were very well done. The students did amazing. You really still can see that progression from 6th grade, 7th grade to 8th grade, and in both the choir and the band, our 8th graders really were fantastic. They leave next Wednesday to go down to Wisconsin Dells to perform at the Beyond the Notes Festival. Again, it's going to be a dynamic performance for them. I wish them luck and just a great musical season and year for them. And good luck to Ms. Hepfler as she is moving on. And so good luck to her in her future endeavors.
Thank you, Mr. Igo. I have 4 just quick things that I wanted to mention, but first I wanted to start out is this meeting, and April and May are always the most bittersweet, as we have colleagues, teachers, and individuals throughout the district that are either retiring or resigning or taking time to be with family or moving away. And so you'll see many different individuals that are on the list tonight that we want to thank them for their service and time in the Prescott Public Schools, as well as the work that they did to continue to foster the mission, vision, and uplifting the students within our district. Second, I wanted to mention is that later this week or early next week, every family will be receiving from the National Child Identification Program opportunity to fingerprint and take a picture of their students. It's a safety protocol that's been put out statewide based on some recent experiences that are unfortunate for the death of a student in another district that was very close to here. And then finally, I just wanted to, well, actually I have 2 finallys, so you got to bear with me. First one is just wanted to recognize and offer to the board chair this check on behalf of PTAX. This was given and acknowledged over at the girls' softball field last week, but donation to put in the outdoor and indoor electric scoreboards was presented to me, and on behalf of the district, I'd like to present the board chair. We're going to put it right in front of your desk, but it's $232,000 that's being donated to allow us to upgrade a lot of the hardware within our stadium. So thank you to PTAX for their support, and we look forward to making sure that this fall is transformed indoors and outdoors with video scoreboards.
Cool. Awesome.
Don't try that at home. All right. And then obviously, later today, we have the opportunity to continue our discussion. What I believe is one of the most transformative and innovative creative academic models that could be something that could transform and elevate our district. And I really look forward to that discussion and understand that the decision is not being made tonight, but to be able to give some additional input and parameters for our community. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to school business. First item is to elect board officers. We have the president up first for election. Would anybody care to make a nomination here?
I'll nominate Mike Matzik.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Not just repeating myself, that's
3 times.
Do that, so. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you, guys. Next up is vice president. Is there anybody that would like to make a nomination here?
I'll nominate Steve Sizemore.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations, Tanya? No. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Now to clerk. We need a nomination for clerk. And remind me, is Pat the clerk right now?
Correct.
You don't
That's
know.
accurate.
I don't remember. Yeah.
I'm not that impactful.
He's the signer.
I'm a good signer.
There's
Yeah,
a
I am.
big
I'm the
stack
clerk.
here.
I'm
There's
the
a lot of
clerk, Mike.
paperwork here
Well,
that
I
Jordan
nominate
will walk
Tanya.
you
I'm just
through.
kidding.
I'll nominate Pat Black.
I'll second that.
Are there any, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And finally, treasurer. this one is.
I nominate Tanya Holub.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second for Tanya. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. All right. Thank you. Move on. to
Congratulations.
Consent. And in consent, we have the board minutes from April 20th, 2022, board checks, non-licensed personnel retirement, resignation, employment change of non-licensed staff, selection of the depository for investment funds, designation of the official newspaper and publication of minutes, renewal of WIAA annual membership, renewal food service agreement with St. Joseph's Parish School, MOU with Brighter Smiles annual dental outreach program, and agreement between UW Stout and PS for student teacher placement. Is there anything in the consent that the board would like to have removed? If not, I will adopt the consent agenda. Are there any objections? Seeing the answer is no objections, we'll consider the consent agenda adopted. Thank you. We'll move on to item C, resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of a $15 million bond anticipation note pursuant to section 6712(1)B Wisconsin statutes.
And I'm going to welcome Jordan from Baird, and he's going to present to you. This is a follow-up from Lisa Bosson, who was here last month. Jordan?
Hello, everybody. So, as Rick just said, Lisa was here last month and kind of went through the full plan for implementing the financing for the referendum. So I'm going to be brief, but I'll kind of go over both of these next two topics, C and D. The first one is for the bond anticipation note. So if you recall, this is essentially a construction loan or the initial financing for the referendum. It is very short term. It matures in 6 months, and it can be prepayable in 3 months, and it is for the full referendum amount of $15 million. So it would close on June 13th, so this coming June 13th, and on that date, the district would receive the full funds of $15 million, and it can be deposited into the project fund account for the referendum. So again, it matures on December 16th, so 3 months out, and can be prepaid 3 months out on September 13th. So right now, it is our full intention to refund this interim financing at that 3-month mark. So we went out to a network of banks that would be interested in this type of financing, and the lowest rate came in at 1.9%, which is fantastic, because even with the increasing rates, we were really hoping to be under 2%, and we achieved that goal. So the next item is for the parameters resolution, and this pertains to the long-term financing, the bonds that are ultimately going to replace this interim financing. So what this does is it outlines all the parameters that we have to meet to sell the bonds. And if we meet all of the parameters detailed in this resolution, then it delegates the authority to the business manager and finance coordinator to sign on behalf of the board. So without this process, we would have to sell the bonds on a board meeting date, and we would be beholden to whatever's going on on the market on that date. So, whether there's an economic event that is going to spike interest rates and it's going to make investors steer clear of municipal bonds, or if there's other bonds selling on the same date, distracting investors from the district's bonds. So this allows us to target any day to sell the bonds once we're ready and a good day presents itself. So a couple of the parameters that we have to meet, it has to be $15 million or less, which legally we would not be able to sell greater than $15 million, the referendum amount. We designate an interest rate of 4.75% or less Right now, we're probably closer to a 4% interest rate, so it gives us a little cushion there. As I'm sure you're all aware, the interest market is very volatile right now. And it outlines the a preliminary amortization that we have to be relatively close to each year within $500,000. So all of this together gives us the ability to be flexible enough to meet the goals leading into the referendum, the financing goals for the district. It's kind of a lot. I know, like I said, Lisa covered it last month. Any questions on either of these topics?
Steve, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Vicki, do you have any questions?
No, I mean, what Lisa talked about and the information that we've seen, and yep, now same information from you, it sounds good.
All right.
I think I got it.
Shay, any questions?
No.
A lot of money. All right. Time?
Just one question. So if the parameters that you described are not met, what that means is that we would not have the flexibility of choosing the date when we needed to. It would be on a line with a board meeting date.
It would mean that we would have to come back to the board before we could sell the bond. So whether it's selling on a future board date, or we could come back with a different parameters resolution.
Okay.
But yeah, it would not give us authority to sell bonds until we have a different approval from the board.
And the only one really not within our control is the interest rate one.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Pat?
No, no questions right now.
Yeah, I don't, we've done this before, where we've kind of passed off control to buy bonds. And it was for the HVAC project, right?
Yeah, last time we worked with Baird, it was on Act 32, when we sold $3.8 million worth of bonds. And again, it was just structured in a way so that we could execute it whenever the timing worked best, based on the suggestions and monitoring of the rates by Baird.
And so the big one here that we see is 4.75%. If we hit that threshold, we'd have to come back.
Well, 7.
If we can't hit that threshold, we would have to come back to the board, correct?
Correct.
So like I said, if we were selling in today's market, I think we would be around or slightly below 4%. So our goal is to sell these bonds shortly after this ban closes, as soon as we're able, as soon as the market is in a good position to do so. So with this volatile market, we essentially want to lock in long-term rates as soon as we can.
Okay.
And one thing I wanted to add is that we're working with Baird on the 25th, I believe, is our rating call.
Right.
And so that is one additional step where our financial situation is a lot better than it had been. Also, the economy within Prescott, with the advance and extension of the business park and the new 2 housing developments, gives us a sliver of a chance that we could improve our rating, and which would then give us a more prime opportunity for lower interest rates. So that's why we're doing the ban, and then doing the rating call, getting all the paperwork done, and then being able to strike on the general obligation bonds.
And the district did receive a rating upgrade when we sold the bonds in 2020, which was great. It went from A1 to AA3. It's a Moody's rating, which is a great rating for a district, especially a smaller district. So that rating is going to have a direct impact on the interest rates you receive.
Okay. Yeah, it looks good to me. We try to provide as much flexibility as we possibly can to make sure you can lock in on it at the right time.
Yeah, flexibility, but again, we have these parameters to make the board feel comfortable that we're going to hit all the benchmarks that we need to hit.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions before we go over? All right, we'll need a motion for item C here. This is what we're going on first.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2022-01, authorizing the issuance and sale of a $15 million bond anticipation note, BAN, pursuant to Section 67.121B of the Wisconsin statutes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. And then the second resolution is item D, which we also talked about, was establishing the parameters. Here to make a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 2022-02, authorizing the issuance and establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $15 million general obligation refunding bonds.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other further dialogue on this one before we vote? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. All right.
Jordan, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the phone calls earlier today. And I know that you have to race back to the Dells for a conference, so appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I grew up in Milwaukee, but went to Minnesota, so I've done this drive many times.
Yeah. And just a reminder, our president, clerk, and me have to, all this paperwork has to be signed by the end of tonight and transferred over. So remember, it's a late night and we got some signatures to go. Thanks.
All right. Item E, consider retirement, resignation, new hires. First one is retirement.
No additional retirements at this time.
Okay, resignations.
Yes, like I mentioned at the beginning, kind of a bittersweet time, but we want to thank the individuals that have provided service to Prescott Public Schools. The first resignation is special education teacher at the middle school, Pam Jurinas.
Board, any comments or questions? Okay, we can take a motion.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Pamela Juranis, special education teacher, middle school, as of the end of the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next one is Alyssa.
Yeah, Alyssa, second grade teacher for Malone Elementary.
Thanks, Rick, for not saying her last name. I appreciate that.
Do we need a pronunciation there?
Schlushler.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any comments, questions? Otherwise, we'll take a motion.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Alyssa Schlushler, second grade teacher, Malone Elementary School, as of the end of the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries.
Then our middle school band teacher, Brianna Hepler, is resigning at the end of the school year.
I'll entertain a motion unless there's comments or questions on this one.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Brianna Hepler, band teacher, middle school, as of the end of the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. Next.
Our PE teacher for Malone, Derek Munson.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Derek Munson, PE teacher, Malone Elementary School, as of the end of the 2021-2022 school year.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries.
Another middle school special education teacher, Danielle Madikow, is resigning at the end of the year.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Danielle Mandelkow, special education teacher, middle school, as of the end of the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries.
Grade 4 at the intermediate, Callie Johnson.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Callie Johnson, fourth grade teacher, intermediate school, as of the end of the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. Lastly,
Alexa Gibson, who is a second grade teacher at Malone Elementary.
I'll move to accept the resignation of Alexa Gibson, second grade teacher, elementary school, as of the end of the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that one carries. On to item 3, new hires.
Yeah, so kind of the other side of the coin, wanted to thank the administrative team for their quick action and being able to kind of turn around and making sure that we secured staff for next fall. It's a very competitive market out there. There's a lot of open positions around us, so again, I wanted to tip my hat to them. We're going to start, however, with athletics. We do have a volleyball coach. Unfortunately, our activities director, Andrew Caudill, is doing double duty. He is currently doing the seating of the WIA baseball seatings, and he is the host, and so he was unable to be here. We are putting forward Miss Tracy Budworth. Many of you know of her and some of the work that she has done. She's currently working at the high school. She has coached within our district and has had different roles from 1998 through 2018. She has also participated in our Prescott Community Recreation for over multiple years. I was going to say 10, but it's 20. High school coaching from 2010 to 2016, middle school coaching in 2014, and she also is part of a club volleyball, and so she is an experienced player herself. Part of Mr. Caudill's process has always been to ask the candidates about their vision for the girls volleyball. He has had input from stakeholders in trying to design each of the different areas, the progressive skill building, and making sure that they align with all levels of student performance and the coaches that are above and below them, emphasizing skill development. Also wanted to work on increasing in-game play and strategizing so that they can use and maximize the talent that they have, and then emphasize the bonding across programs at all levels. So the strong relationships within the district, but also across PCR. So Andrew put together kind of the 4 primary things is that Tracy values culture, both as a professional teacher, but also as a coach. She has strong knowledge of the game, has an exciting plan to build the program from 7th grade on up. My understanding is that if appointed, she already has an appointment to be at the middle school on Friday. And then Tracy is building, hoping to recruit strong coaches around her.
Steve, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Dr. Spikuza, and I've got no problem with Tracy Budworth here as a volleyball coach. What I do want to know, if you can answer this, is what the process looked like for hiring, candidate pool, those types of things.
Yeah, he did post. We did have it on, I believe it was on Weekend, which is the national or the state site, and also notified internally. He did have more than one candidate. He moved forward with the interview and then made this recommendation.
You know how many candidates?
I don't know.
But we do know there was an interview process with more than one candidate and it wasn't an
I
appointment.
know
so to
that
speak.
there was more than one applicant.
Okay. Thank you.
Vicki?
No questions.
Shay, any questions here?
No questions.
Tanya?
Steve, that was my question as well, so I appreciate you asking it. I had a follow-up kind of thing that I would just like to see in the future, and Andrew's not here, so maybe Rick, you can carry the message. But whenever we bring new coaches on, it's a big job, and there's high expectations. The role has changed from a varsity coach over the past couple of years. And I would, I feel really clear on kind of the hiring process. I know kind of the review process, or at least some of it. I would really like to see kind of what our plan is to grow these coaches during that first year, especially as they're getting new staff, as they're learning new systems, and then what that plan looks like. Because I really want to stay at a place where we're able to keep and maintain our coaches and they're growing within our program. So that's just something I'd be interested to look at for ways to support our coaches, and specifically in this case, Tracy, along the way.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pat?
No questions.
You guys answered all mine, so.
I'll move to accept the hire of Tracy Budworth as volleyball coach.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next.
Is middle school math teacher Nathan McFetrus? Feeders. McFeeders.
I'll ask one question, Dr. because you kind of mentioned it already, but What does the pool look like for looking for teachers?
Yeah, it varies by position. Obviously, the younger the grade level, we tend to have more applicants than we do at the higher end. But Mr. Igo, how many were in your pool?
For math, we had 9.
Okay.
How many were licensed with teachers, as a teacher?
In math, all 9.
All 9.
ELA, we only had 6. We've got significantly more in band, but it's all right now in that 10 to 12 range.
Thank you. I'll move to accept the hire of Nathan McFeeters as middle school math teacher.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Then for middle school math, 7th grade, Madison Arman.
I'll move to accept the hire of Madison Arman as middle school math teacher.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries.
Middle school's running the bingo card here. Kate Early, middle school, ELA.
I'll move to accept the hire of Katie Early as middle school ELA teacher.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
And Josh, you might have to help me on this, but was it Joy Schreiber?
I'll move to
Cross-categorical special ed. Sorry, Steve.
No, you're fine, sorry. I'll move to accept the hire of Joy Schreiber as high school cross-categorical teacher.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Then we're back to elementary. We have Mary Gribble, a 2nd grade teacher.
If I can inquire to the elementary school principal as to what that hiring pool looked like?
There were like 28 applicants, a range of years that people have been teaching, from new teachers to teachers that have had 28 years of experience. We interviewed 8 people for the 2 positions that were available, and landed on the 2 that are going forward tonight.
You said 28 applicants? And so middle school had 10 to 11, so to speak?
Per position.
Okay, interesting.
And we interviewed both people with experience and fresh out of college or student teaching right now.
A broad spectrum, okay, thank you.
Yep.
I got a question maybe for any administrator too. Any common themes as you've seen people, certainly some of them were new graduates probably from school, right? Any common themes of mid-career hires of why they were moving, why they were looking for something new?
One of the ones for the elementary building, it was, she took a couple years off to raise her children and was coming back into education. She just moved to the area and wanted to be in the district for her children. The other one, I don't know for sure why, she's reached out several times at different openings, inquiring about jobs, so I know she's been interested in Prescott for a while. And she interviewed really, really well and was a pick for the team.
Location, moving here.
Location.
The mid-career, 2 of mine are mid-career, and they are both moving here due to significant others relocating.
Thank you.
That looked to be pretty common. Like most of our staff that left, it was location closer to home, stuff like that.
Thanks.
I'll move to accept the hire of Mary Gribble as 2nd grade teacher.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Maria, is my microphone on?
Yeah, but it's pointing down, we're pointing up.
Yes. Can you guys hear me? No? I'm trying to speak a little louder. That's not on.
It is dead. All right.
All right, where are we? We're on Lindsay. We're on the next one, 2nd grade teacher, Lindsay.
Lindsay Spielman.
I'll move to accept the hire of Lindsay Spielman as 2nd grade teacher.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That one carries. All right, we're moving on to set the date and time of the regular board meetings, item F. So every year it's been Thursday, third Wednesday of every month, of each month at 7 p.m.
Third Wednesday.
Third Wednesday, is that what I not?
You said Thursday, but.
Thursday, I'm sorry. I'm kind of, no, I'm flustered.
Mike,
because
you
I don't
wanna
have a
trade
microphone
seats?
that works.
Why don't we trade?
Do you want mine?
Seriously, trade.
Oh, there you go. Here, you want Shay's?
You just gonna have to hold it now.
Oh, this is weird.
Thanks, Shay.
All right, can you hear me?
I think maybe it is.
Tap it again.
Talk to me one more time, will you, Mike?
It's
I don't know.
definitely on.
Is that gonna work? Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely on.
I don't know. That's weird.
All right. Okay. Am I good now? So item F is set the date and time of the regular school board meetings. We typically have this designated for the third Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. Any changes to this, guys?
The only thing I remember is last year when we did this, I think there was some discussion of potentially moving it up a little bit so that the administration and teachers were
Yeah.
here all day and weren't sitting around until 7 o'clock.
They can't work,
I
they
bring
can't
that up
work,
because I remember talking about it a little bit.
they can't work between the end of the day and 7 o'clock, or what are you saying, Pat? Sorry, just kidding.
Rick, would it be beneficial for your admin team to move it up?
Oh, goodness. Wasn't prepared for that question. Obviously, it'd be nice, but I also know that some of you are traveling now that COVID's over, that you're trying to get back by 6:30 has
Put a
been.
time limit on it, maybe?
Time limit on
Yeah.
meetings, agenda items? I could do 6 o'clock if it works for others.
The only concern would be if we have closed session, that typically would start an hour before or 45 minutes before, so I would bump that up.
Where you go after.
Or we go after. We could do that too. I'm okay moving it up too. Steve, do you have any comments on this?
I don't care.
Vicky?
It doesn't matter either way to me now. I'm in town. It's
All
good.
right. Shay, I'd ask you, but you probably don't care. You probably wish it was at 6 this year.
Josh. Would it help you guys?
Does the administration have a thumb up or thumb down for us? Indifferent?
Helen Rabel's like, yeah, 6 o'clock, awesome.
Yeah. Let's try 6.
Well, don't blame me if it doesn't work. I just wanted to bring it up.
It's gonna be in
We
the
don't wanna
minutes
change
that
this.
you brought it up.
I was, we haven't talked about this at all, but I was thinking 6:30. I would like to at least push it up a little bit if we could, but is it better to stay on the hour so it's easier to remember? Like 6:30.
We used to be
Or 6
7:30,
o'clock,
right?
instead of 6:30. You guys good with 6?
Still got time to eat dinner, so yeah, sure.
Let's just go with 6 o'clock, and that'll be easier for the public to know too, because sometimes if you're on the bottom of the hour, it's a little bit harder to remember. And then if we have to do a closed session, we can choose whether or not we can go before or if we have to wait till after. It works for us.
All right, so I'll move to designate the third Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. at Prescott High School as the official date, time, and location of the 2022-2023 board meetings.
I'll second.
Pat didn't even motion or second his own idea. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries.
Does this start next month then?
Yes, it'll start.
I think I might need it later, that one. I'm just kidding.
We're going to move on to item G, consider second reading of the Neola policies.
So there are 3 that were presented to you last month. Again, these were brought forward due to just being a need to be compliant legally with some updates with regards to anti-harassment. What the added language is that it included, and obviously based on some of the real life stories was to ensure that board on board or board on district administration harassment is not tolerated.
Tanya, any questions on these?
You know, I have no questions. We've looked at some of this. I think did we see the second and third one before? I mean, I know that it was just that it was being, I read them and it said it's being reported to the district administrator, any board. I'm sorry, the district administrator is speaking to the president, which is Mike, if there's any kind of board concerns and stuff like that. I couldn't remember if we saw that one before or not. Are we only talking about the first one? We're talking about
We're only
three,
talking
right?
about the first one. Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
So what's on screen, anything in green is the new language, so you can kind of see, you know, oftentimes there's titles are changed, they capitalize or they strike things, and then the only area that's different is the green part, and then you had options to select. And so it was just extending, adding board member, and then also board members reporting to law enforcement.
And this was on our agenda last month?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I don't have any questions. I think it's unfortunate we're in this position, but it's important to have on there.
Okay, so that's policy number 1. Any other questions on policy, on this first one, guys?
No.
Okay, can we
And then
roll in the next one?
the second one is on district board relationships, and so in the interest of promoting and maintaining a healthy, productive work environment, the district administrator should report to the board president any information where the board member has conduct in violation of the policy or threatens behavior towards staff members or threatens or threatening behavior towards other staff members or board members. That's a mouthful.
Anybody have any questions on this one? Rick, these are suggestions. If I remember last month, Neola is making these suggestions, right?
Yeah, these were updated over a year ago. We just, because of all the other things that were on our plate, just weren't able to bring them forward. The regular kind of sequence will be, we have another whole set to go through starting in June.
Okay. And then the last one
Is
waiver.
this one's pretty straightforward. This is basically a federal law called the McKinney-Vento to make sure that when students or families are paying fees or fines, that we make sure that there are adjustments and accommodations made for students who are identified as homeless. Obviously, as our district, we also make accommodations and adjustments for families on free and reduced lunch. So this is just adding the McKinney-Vento homeless legislation.
questions or comments on this one? Anyone? Okay, these are the second readings. So if we make a motion, they'll be approved in our policies. So entertain a motion here.
I'll move to approve second reading of new Neola policies.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Item H, consider updated salary schedule for all PSD staff.
So last month we moved forward with regards to the salary scale for our licensed teachers. Thank you for approving the double step. All of the contracts for next year have been sent out 2 weeks in advance to our teachers, and they're coming back. They are required by statute to be back by June 15th. We also wanted to take some time to make sure that we made adjustments to be market competitive with regards to our hourly employees. One of the things that I wanted to just kind of remind people is that last year we did add $2 to every cell for all hourly employees, and that had kicked off in February with regards to a job study for our custodians. In addition, we made sure that every step there was an increase that accelerated on the first few steps at 4 to 5%, which was much higher than the consumer price index Obviously, the Consumer Price Index at the time for benchmarking for Wisconsin schools is currently at 4.5. The recommendation that I'm making and working with Sue to keep our staff and salaries competitive is that we would increase cells that were highlighted for you, and I'm just having trouble pulling that up. So basically, it would be food service. There would be an additional 25 cents added so that the range would run from $15 to $17. We would adjust the first two steps for custodians with a starting salary at $17.25 and going to $20.25. We are recommending that our aides would also increase by 25 cents on each cell except for step 4 because that already had a 4.5 increase. The other change that we're recommending is in comparison to administrative assistants, and we currently have 4 openings due to some retirements, that we wanted to add $1 to each cell so that we would move from $16 to $17 across the board. You're roughly looking at 64 additional staff members making these adjustments. And the other piece that we would be recommending is that after step 5, and it depends on the different job classifications. For example, our administrative assistants, there are 9. Currently, 4 of them are above step 5. We would be recommending to keep it in kind with the CPI and provide a 4.5 increase for anybody above step 5. So that's part 1. Secondly, we are recommending that the supervisors, so you're looking at the positions for facility and grounds, transportation, and food service, the district office and principals, to have an overall range and increase of 3.5 to 4.5.
Steve, any questions?
No comments from me.
Vicky?
No, I don't think I have any comments. I think it's a lot of numbers, and I just want to make sure that we can sustain this. So as far as going into next year, this isn't going to make an impact? We'll be fine with wages and everything next year?
Yeah, so for next year, we're confident that this will be something that we definitely can absorb. Sustainability, that'll be our next presentation as we head into June. As you know, we are on the 2nd year of the biennium of 0 funding, and that the levy cap was not raised. So we have 2 years of no additional funding coming from our state, and yet we've doubled the steps for our teachers. We've increased salaries by 4.5, and our healthcare went up. Gas went up. So it will not be sustainable unless the legislators in Madison take action, and that'll be part of the call to arms, if you will, of having our families understand in order to kind of retain and keep our staff. It's going to be, and it's not just Prescott, it's obviously with the billions of dollars that they're sitting on, important for them to step up to the plate.
Tanya?
Rick, in the second table there, after step 5, there's a column that says end of year $400. Am I reading that right? And is that something that we're suggesting for all staff member beyond step 5, for everybody at the end of the year, if they're agreeing to next, what does that mean?
Is it there?
Yeah.
That was I gotcha. So that was previously approved for hourly employees.
Yep.
That they were going to be hero pay. So they're getting
This one time, or
it's
is
a
it?
one-time,
Okay,
and it's
so
May
that
30th.
is one time still.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. That was my only question. I just want to say that these are really, really important people for our school districts, and maintaining and keeping these staff, it's not easy, especially when we look around and see how much fast food places are paying and other jobs and stuff. So it's really important that these staff members that really are kind of like the lifeline behind the scenes for our kids and our teachers and our administrators, that we can keep them and that we can pay them a wage that they can, feel comfortable with and enough for, they don't have to have 2 or 3 jobs and can stay with us. So I appreciate this. I think it's something that we need to do.
Pat?
No other comment. It is important. We have to do it. If it's not sustainable, then we have to find some other way to make it sustainable because it has to happen. So, yes, absolutely, I'm in support of this.
Agreed. All right, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve updated schedule for hourly employee wages on step and lane table, supervisor, district office, and principal pay increases, and elimination of step A on the professional pay schedule for new licensed staff hires.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries.
Mike, I'll abstain.
Thank you, Steve. We'll move on to item I, grade 8 Washington, D.C. overnight trip.
And so this was presented as an information discussion. We have a 1-slide just recap from Principal Igo.
So we have been talking about the DC trip. We at the last meeting we talked that we had chosen Education First, or EF, with a price point of about $12.50 per student. If we are able to do this, we're going to hold our information meeting on this next Monday, the 23rd. And at that time, for the next 10 days, they get about $100 off, so it'll be about $11.50. For parents, it's a $1,500. Parents and families are allowed to go on the trip with us. They have a whole package of insurances and whatnot that go along with it. So that's just a quick recap of what we had talked about at the last meeting.
Any questions from the board?
I didn't get to go, and you probably said this and I just missed it, but how many families showed up?
That's it. This upcoming.
It's this month.
This next Monday. Right now we've got 28 families signed up with 49 confirmed people, and we have 11 families that cannot make it that want more information. And it's just an informational meeting only this next Monday.
Great, thank you.
All right. We can take a motion.
I'll move to approve grade 8 Washington, D.C. overnight trip aiming for June of 2023.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That one carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Drago. Move on to item J, consider high school Costa Rica trip.
Wow, the leader.
Oh. Yeah,
Welcome.
it's been a while since I've seen you and pitched this, a couple of years. COVID got in the way. So basically we're just here to get final approval, provide any other information that you might need. So June of 2023 is what we're looking at, and we have a window of June 16th to July 1st. Travel dates get finalized in February or March of 2023. I'll be having a student informational meeting tomorrow pending approval here, and then shortly thereafter a parent meeting, and we would start officially enrolling June 15th of this year.
Board, any questions? Shay, any questions? All right. You can take a motion here.
I'll move to approve the high school Costa Rica trip, proposed dates 2022-2023, previously approved trip dates.
I'll second.
Do we need to clarify that? Is that good?
Yeah, feel free to clarify.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That one carries. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nicole, thank you. And thank you for leading that trip.
And
Item
thanks for your
K.
patience.
Item K, first reading of new policies.
Yes, these two were recommended. Again, this is a process where we go first reading, then second reading. What was brought forward was controversial issues in the classroom. This is an update from Neola. Many districts have taken it. We spent a lot of time on this one, going back and forth, and also having two board reps work with us and then working with our staff. There really isn't anything significant that is different other than what's in green. I'm recommending to the board that you not select the first option. And I'm sorry, I should clarify that. It's in the last paragraph, or second to last paragraph, where it says, in discussion of any controversial issue. Currently, we do allow our teachers to voice their own opinion. We didn't want them to be robotic, and that if they don't have to share their own opinion, but if students were to ask our teachers, as long as they identify that it's their own opinion. This policy is adding that teachers have to be mindful, obviously, that their opinion can sway students, and that they would have to be the last comment or the last individual to speak on that topic. To me, that just opens up for an administrative nightmare of he said, she said, of whether or not a teacher presented his or her opinion in the classroom before or after all students were said and done. We really haven't had that many challenges, and I think that the policy in and of itself is fine, and that we had spent a lot of time on it. The other option that has been put forward is that the classroom should not be used as a forum for discussion of district employment issues. Again, I don't think that any of our teachers use that as a forum. It's kind of an odd line to have added. I would recommend that you don't select it, but I would defer to the board.
Tanya, do you have any questions on this one?
Well, I think you guys probably know how I feel about this one, so just to kind of reiterate, I love that everybody has opinions and stuff. I am different from the rest of the board in this one, where I think that teachers should be facilitators, share data, share information, and I don't think teachers should share their personal opinion, especially about some of the, I think just providing the data and letting kids come up with their own. So that's me personally in the classroom. But yes, when it comes to this specifically, I agree that we should take that red part out, because that would be really difficult for our teachers to follow. So, yeah.
So, Pat.
Rick, I just want to, so if we look at the green, the last sentence in the green, the administration does not recommend selecting what is currently in the green. Is that what?
No, the parentheses that follow that, you usually mark the classroom should not be used for a forum for a discussion of district employment issues.
Yep.
I would just select, I would recommend that you don't select that.
The portion in the blue is what,
correct.
Is what it is. Okay. All
yep.
Right.
We want, you guys are recommending the green.
Correct. We would accept the green, but not what follows.
I just want to make sure I understood.
No,
you guys.
good clarification.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Steve?
I don't know that I've got any additional comments at this time.
Okay, Vicki?
Sure.
I'm with Pat. I was a little confused as to what you're recommending and what you're not. So the green?
The green is what's new.
Is what's new.
Yeah, and the red part was language that we were recommending to be stricken from, it initially was green, and we are recommending that you don't take it.
Okay.
And then there is the last sentence that says the classroom should not be used as a forum.
Yep.
We are recommending that that not be checked either.
And I'm sorry, just for clarification, the sentence that Pat mentioned, starting with administration does not, that shouldn't be in green. It's actually just telling us that you're not recommending what's in blue, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, just for clarification there. Maybe just want to change that color just so it's not, because it looks like it's part of something that you want us to approve.
Yeah.
See if I can do that.
And just for clarity, guys, this is a first reading, so if you know there's other questions or feedback that comes back, on this one, we can always bring that up at the next board meeting and continue to revise this if it's not.
And the stuff in the red, that was something that Neola, part of their new thing they had suggested, but those are the portions that you're striking and don't want. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. That's the first one.
And then the second one, and this one I think is what most people would refer to as a no-brainer. It really comes out of obviously classes that were being taught virtually, where students were in our example, we had cameras going both ways. It's just making sure that that students understood that the handbook and protocol and etiquette of a classroom still holds. And so obviously displaying or having weapons, chewing or having tobacco, alcohol, illegal drugs, dress and attire, basically F is probably the most encompassing. It's just any inappropriate behavior as outlined in the student handbook would also apply when we're having a virtual classroom. And so it's just extending that when we're in an instructional, whether or not it's in our four walls or virtually, that the handbook still applies.
All right. Steve, any questions?
No.
Vicki?
No.
Shane, any questions on this one? Pat?
No questions.
Tanya?
Yes, quick question, dress code, is that per individual school handbook? Do we have a policy on that? What does that mean?
Yeah, our district does not have an overall student dress code individually, but our handbooks do have, and they're pretty, I guess, they're not very detailed. It's basically making sure that the students, there's certain things that are above about either messaging or illegal drugs and guns aren't displayed.
I think the middle school one's pretty specific. I mean, I've
Not anymore.
did it change as of like last week?
No.
Because it talked about like not wearing jackets, not wearing, it's modest clothing, that all that kind of stuff. When I looked online anyways on the our website.
Okay.
So that was kind of my question. It's really, I thought kind of specific, very different than the high school one.
Yep. No,
Okay.
We
Okay.
updated that one and
Okay.
maybe the updated.
Perfect. I think the website has the old handbook.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a good clarification. All of our handbooks now are on our website so that families can access. And then just to take away, Maria and Kyle, can you just verify that you have the most up-to-date handbook? That would be helpful.
Thank you.
All right. So we're gonna, let me see what the motion looks like here. Is it for just approving both of them? So it's just one motion for both first readings?
Yeah. I mean, you can break it up if you want, but
I think we're good, unless
Okay.
anybody else disagrees. So we can entertain a motion here now.
Why are we voting to approve the first reading?
Yeah.
it's just been a practice that the protocol that Neola has recommended is that you approve the first reading and then you still have the opportunity to either modify or change your vote at the second reading.
It hasn't been our practice, and if we want to change it, I guess I don't have a problem with it, but it doesn't line up with what we've done in the past. Typically, we read them.
Normally it's in info and discussion, so that's, I was
Yeah.
kind of confused. I thought we were
Yeah.
approving it actually.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I was.
Yeah, these are not for final approval, right?
Okay. So we don't need to make a motion then?
I'd prefer not to.
Okay. We'll consider this the first reading.
All right.
Perfect.
All right, that concludes business. We're on to info and discussion. First one is the update on summer school registration.
And Principal Dusick.
Hi, Sarah Dusick, the administrator overseeing 4K through grade 8 summer school programming. Just a reminder that summer school is taking place from June 13th to July 1st from 9 a.m. until 12 p.m. We do have one afternoon class of hunter safety. We did find out this week, unfortunately, that Prairie Fire Children's Theater is not able to come and do our programming this year. They haven't been able to bounce back with directors available to do the programming because of COVID. And they had to select, they are doing programming in some communities, but they had to select communities that they came to, and unfortunately Prescott is one that they had to eliminate. So that was kind of a bummer. Right now we have 80 classes offered for grades 4K through 8th grade. There are a total of 497 students registered. Some of those students might be registered for 3 classes, some might be registered for 2. But there's 497 students registered total, which is a slight increase from last year. Those numbers do not include speed and strength. They don't include any of the high school summer programming, middle school band camps that happen in August, and they don't include our ramp-up days that we'll have in August as well. Happening right now behind the scenes, this is our first year with Infinite Campus, so we have been working through just what that looks like with that new process. So Susie Linder is feverishly working behind scenes to build the classes and get students put into classes. There's been a few where she'll have to work with families that maybe accidentally registered for 2 classes at 9 o'clock and didn't register for a 10 o'clock. So she's been kind of working to get those little glitches fixed up. Transportation is happening behind the scenes. Just a reminder that we don't provide in-town busing during summer school, but we do provide busing to the rural areas and any of the hazard areas. And families are working to get like health forms and stuff submitted. The locations, it's not a perfect science, but 4K through grade 3 will mainly be held at Malone Elementary, and grades 4 through 8 will mainly be held at Malone Intermediate. There might be a little bit of shift there. Like I said, it's not a perfect science, but those are the 2 locations where we will be having summer school this year. And then we just encourage families to continue to watch for the communication that's been sent out to help them understand, like as we build things behind the scenes, like where their classes are, that communication will come out. It was shared out this week that they can see what classes they are registered for and what time those classes are registered for. But if there are some families that are still late to the game, Susie Linder has been great working with them to even get them registered still now. They don't have full access to all the classes because some of them are closed because of numbers. But I know just even today a family reached out and said, I didn't get registered for summer school, and Susie worked with them to find classes that they were able to get registered still for summer school. So.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Sarah?
No.
Don't.
Okay, thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
We'll move on. Item B, update on parent survey with regard to establishing within-day collaboration time via early release or late start fall 2022-23 school year.
And Michael Kozmowski from Malone Intermediate, but also our Director of Teaching and Learning, is going to lead us through kind of the presentation tonight. Obviously, it's still information gathering and the survey, but also his colleagues will be coming forward at the request of the board to make sure that how the time has been currently being used for the 17 Mondays. They'll be joining him as well. So, Michael?
All right. Good evening, board. Thanks again for you being able to talk again about the opportunity and bring forward as an innovative solution that aligns to our strategic board direction that we started the conversation back in December. So one of the things I want to do is just, again, part of its educational piece of how did we get to where we are today, and then where are we going from here. So behind you there's a timeline of how did this come to be, and how did this proposal form. And really the PLC model, something that's been highly supported by the school board over the years, and we're very appreciative of that. We started PLCs all the way back in 2012 in the Prescott School District, and most school districts across the country have switched to a PLC model because of the educational research behind the benefits of learning and by doing together. But really our PLC leadership team that was under Nikki Benson, our former teacher and learning director, created a district level PLC leadership team, which then really has taken on a lot of the innovative work of this model. So back in 2017, sort of where did it all begin for us was back in 2017. There was 13 PLC leaders and myself that attended a conference over in New Prague called PLCs at Work. And one of the speakers at that conference was Anthony Muhammad, a great educational leader in our country. And one of the things that he talked about was how all means all. And the other thing that he brought to that meeting or to that workshop also was this concept that we call School D, or our school of the future. And what do we as an organization want? So from that conference forward to today, there's been a lot of refinement and a lot of work, both by that district PLC leadership team, and then also taking it back to staff at district kickoffs, our new staff at induction meetings, and then also surveying our staff and giving them the opportunity to weigh in on this. And really, that work started in earnest during the 2018-19 and to 2020 school year. And that's right at the same time when the school board was looking at your strategic direction, and one of them being that you wanted a comprehensive and high-quality instruction programs and services that ensure all students benefit from Prescott schools. And that's really where that idea of Concept D and the refinement of what's our academic model came from. Go ahead, Rick. So what are some changes? What are some things that or ways that we've tried to innovate, and where have we been in the past, and where are we looking to go to in the future? So half-day professional development, true 3-hour early releases and late starts was part of the Prescott School District up till 2018. At that time, the high school also had embedded on top of that a weekly collaboration time, which started as late starts and then switched to early releases as well. And part of the issue with that, we saw the benefit of that, especially at the high school level. At that time, I was in the classroom. The hard part were for the other buildings and our busing. And if you remember our busing, we have a single-tiered busing, but we also used to have a hub school where kids would transfer in and out of buses, and we'd have in-town routes and out-of-town routes. And that really is what hindered that model. And at the high school level, they were able to sustain it because a lot of those students can be supervised or working on their own in the commons area, and a lot of them get rides. Whereas the middle school on down, that's just a hardship for our students to be able to get here. So 2008 was when we, again, started this journey. 2015, we have this district PLC leadership. If you remember, the board 2 years ago made the decision to move to return to learn days in August. So that is ramp up to school, those 2 days just prior to the official start of the school year. Earlier this year, the board adopted a continuity of learning plan, which we look at innovative ways to mitigate for intermittent interruptions. So snow days, if for some reason a school would have to close due to the pandemic or something like that, and also students that are just not able to join us on site. To support that initiative, the board also has adopted a 612, a one-to-one Chromebook technology, which has also helped us as well. So those are just some of the changes and things that we've adopted and refined at the school district over the last couple of years. I know this slide is starting to look familiar to people. Again, part of our PLC leadership is we gave opportunities for our leaders and for our staff to weigh in on which of these schools, A through D, did they attend? Which ones do we believe where are we currently? And then where do we want to be working? And then also what sort of learning experience do we want for our students? And overwhelmingly, this School D model of where there's guaranteed learning for all, and that all students can learn at high levels, and we're going to do whatever it takes to ensure that that's occurring. From that work, then the academic model came forward. And if the board remembers in working sessions before we did our survey out to families a few years ago, we were talking about learning labs at the intermediate and at the middle schools. And we did a book study as an administrative team. And then again, from that, again, through the PLC leadership model, what's the student experience and what's the teacher experience in School D, and what are we striving towards? And those have been defined and continue to be refined over the years. One of the things, though, is that I think we all agree on is that education in our districts and schools, as they are, have not produced the results we all desire. Anything new and sustainable cannot be built on a faulty system. Going back to my days in the classroom, the chemist Buckminster Fuller, if you know anything about buckyballs and carbon-16, we can discuss that later though, advised that if you want to change something, you must build a new model, a model that improves of the inequities of the old. And that's what we saw in our old model, is one school being able to have some collaborative time that's put together really did make an improvement in that school, both in the climate, the culture, and for the students. So in order to do that though, we have to find common ground, and there will be shared burdens. I think we're all aware of that. But that has to be found if we want to make this a sustainable reality. And that really is the why of why this collaboration time proposal has come forward after 5 years of work and refinement towards that. So a couple of things that we've committed to. Again, the PLC model is our go-to model for our hub for teaching and learning. Again, we're committing to that all students can learn at that high level, and we're going to do whatever it takes because, as Anthony Muhammad said, all means all. But that requires short cycles of continuous improvement. PLCs, or professional learning communities, again, we focus our work on 4 essential questions. What do we want students to know and be able to do? How we know if they're learning that? How are we going to respond for those students who are not meeting our expectations? And then how do we respond for those students that are ready for more learning? However, that requires teachers to work both collaboratively and interdependently to meet all of those questions that we're trying to answer. Mark Twain once said, continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. And that's something that we've really strived to do over the last several years under the guidance of Dr. Spicuzza, is continually be the best at getting better. Again, we're not striving for perfection, we're striving for continual growth, just like we strive for in our classrooms and our students as well. We have that for the adults in the room. So if you remember back in December, there was an initial, we piloted the early release model last year at the K-5 level, and then back in January, the board committed to 17 Mondays of piloting that across our district. The board at that time did not have enough information. When you adopted the calendar for next year, you asked for a process to come forward to help you make that decision about early releases and our academic model, and if that's where we're going to go as a district. So I came to you in February following the TeamWorks model, where the process to the left there is gathering that stakeholder voice, and then having a design or options team create options that live within those parameters. So that way you, the school board, the choice makers, can make that decision. And once that decision is made, a go or no go, then we can work on the implementation and all of the questions that will need to be answered and refined in order to make that a reality. So part of that process is we created a guiding change document, which has both our context and current realities on it. What are those desirable outcomes and results that we all want? And then what are the unacceptable means? And I'm not going to go over that whole document with you, but just on the focus question, just to refocus our thinking and what we're talking about today is, again, how, and this what this options team was tasked with, is creating a school calendar that best balances the instructional needs, the district academic performance priorities, and providing within the workday time to collaborate and team around our students' needs. So this group of educators, of PLC leaders from across the district, have been working on that and collecting that stakeholder voice, so that way we can create and come to the board next month with options that fit within the parameters and guidance of the board and allow you to make an informed decision. So last month I came to you with survey results from our licensed staff and how they were feeling about PLCs and collaboration and the need for collaboration time. We have gone back to some of the staff that had not answered, so that way we could get more of our staff voice there. So our staff participation now is up to 94%. You'll see a slight change in the graphics that were presented there as well. But much like we learned from school perceptions when they did that survey for us a couple of years back from our community, is I believe the number they shared was 18%. And if you get 18% stakeholder voice, after that, that will provide you with enough information to use to make decisions, and it's likely to not change much within that. And again, that was coming from school perceptions. So 94% of our staff have now participated. If we look at families, we had 377 responses. Doesn't sound like a lot of responses, but when you put it into the context of the students that those families represent, that's just over half of our students, half of our families represented in that number. So as we go through the results, this slide again is just our staff slide. Again, our perspectives of trying to get to School D, but then the top graphic there is, again, do you believe that we can get there without PLCs? And really for me and for us and for the administrative team as we look at this is, again, a preponderance of our staff, 86%, agree we can't do it alone. What that means is that we also have 14% of our staff that it tells us that maybe there's not enough education being done, and maybe we need to refine some of our processes in the PLCs, which again, we are always looking to continuously improve. And to me, that's really what that number is telling us. But again, an overwhelming majority, preponderance of staff are saying we absolutely need this if School D is where we're going to go and provide the best educational opportunities for our students, which we all agree is where we are heading. Next slide. Now, we didn't specifically ask the staff about late start or early release. Part of that survey to the families that we were charged to give out was to, again, we know it's a hardship. We know that there's burdens and there's shared burdens. And where is it less of a hardship? I know back in December when we were talking about piloting this, it was why an early release versus a late start. And there's lots of different reasons and family reasons for this, but the families have spoken and they have shown that 3/4, 75% of our families believe that it's easier for them to sustain an early release versus a late start. Another question that we asked to both our staff and our families was the frequency. How often do we believe that this is needed for our staff? As you can see, again, a preponderance, just over 70%, felt weekly that is where they're going to have the most growth within their PLC, that continuous improvement. And then again, for families, which is the easiest to sustain, and families said that they believed that a weekly was much easier to sustain than an every other week. Again, when we talked to families, when the survey went out, there was a range given both for the weekly and every other week, and that range was based on the range that came out of the staff survey, and also when I met with the board representatives, we wanted to give families at least an idea of the amount of time that we were looking at, so they had that information, even though the board has not decided exactly what that amount will be. And then again, when we looked at staff, when we asked them about weekly and monthly and twice a month, if we just focus on the weekly, because that's what families are showing, is that our average was 1.2 hours. The buildings are broken out slightly different. You can see the two buildings that have done this now, pilot for 2 years, believe more time is needed. And again, the way that we currently are doing things during this collaborative time at the middle school and high school, less time. But again, as I talk to the administrators of the buildings, as I talk to this team that's come together, is some of it is based on what is our current practice, and again, what will we need to do and change within that practice in order to get us to that next level, to get us from being School B to School C, and then School C to School D eventually. So that was the time part of it. And then we asked about the day of the week, right? And as you can see, a preponderance of staff believe that Mondays are the best day for us. When we looked at families, preponderance, their first choice was the Friday, but if you look at their first and second choice, again, talking about shared burdens and hardships, Mondays, 71% had it as their first and second choice. Fridays, again, slightly higher at 85% as their first and second. There's definitely are benefits. Even the committee talked about this, benefits to families having it at the end of the week. There's also costs. And some of those costs are, again, if we look back to the fundamental purpose of what we're trying to do here and why do we need this PLC and collaborative time, is that end of the week collaboration, much like the students, staff are exhausted at the end of the week. One thing that we also talked about was the momentum to carry things over a weekend is very difficult versus the momentum of if we meet as a collaborative team on a Monday and we set plans in motion, we now have 4 days to deliver on that versus on a Friday when everyone's exhausted, you go home for the weekend to pick it back up on Monday with that same vigor. Probably won't be there, and therefore it would just be the return just on our investment would not quite be there as it would be. Also, making adjustments on a Friday versus a Monday, after the week is over, to make an adjustment, to try to carry that out over the week or even connect with families versus on a Friday afternoon versus being able to talk with them on a Tuesday or a Wednesday and still be able to make those adjustments. Also, as we look at formative assessment practices, typically formative assessments happen late in the week. Teachers then grade those formative assessments and get a gauge of where they need to adjust. So adjusting on a Monday for the remainder of the week makes sense versus taking a formative assessment late in the week and then having to wait to the following week to be able to analyze those results and then make adjustments. Just puts us a week behind of where we could have been in providing that as needed assistance to our students and to our families. And again, just a couple things of the staff takeaways from the survey. And again, I shared these last time, is that again, dedicated collaboration time is essential to their work. It benefits every student every day. And that in order to work interdependently, one, it needs to be within the 40-hour work week, because many of our staff, as you just approved today, are coaches, many young families, and a number of our staff that have other obligations and jobs. So if we want to be able to have all of these different departments together, and one of the big misses that came out of the survey that staff shared was that they really want and need our administrative assistant, or our aides, our educational assistants at the table as well. They also are part of the teaching staff and help deliver on those goals that we're trying to meet, and therefore having the ability of the aides to be at the table is something that came out of that survey as imperative. So, do PLCs and collaboration time work? And I took a little snip here, and there's a full article here. Again, in education, if you say PLC, 99% of people know what you're talking about because it's something that over the last 20 years have been refined in education. From, again, some of Mike Mattos, Anthony Muhammad, Rick DeFore, some of the big names in education. But again, it sets higher expectations for student achievement when we're able to collaborate. Our students can count on help from their teachers and peers. The quality of classroom pedagogy is considerably higher, and achievement levels are considerably higher. And that's the educational research behind PLCs and collaboration. If we want to look at our own local data, back in 2016-2017 school year, so my first year in teaching and learning, one of the things that I was tasked with as I met with the principals and what support they needed is we saw a disconnect in our algebra classes from grades 8 and 9. So we have about a third of our students take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and we have the rest of our students take Algebra 1 in 9th grade. And we're looking at experiences, right? Do we have similar experiences between those two classrooms? Are there the same expectations? How closely aligned are our assessments? So one of the things we worked on is setting our norms as a PLC, but then again, starting with the end in mind. So we wrote our assessments together, which made us commit to the same units, the same course of study within those two again, at different grade levels. We looked at our pace, our instructional techniques, our grading, and again, we did some rounding activities where we graded different assessments, and then how closely were our grading and what the look-fors were that we were doing together. And that was a long, tedious process. We met bi-monthly for 2 to 3 hours. And I thank those 2 teachers that went through that process with me. And the pace was not what they wanted. But one of the things that we were able to do is through the strategic use of data was to look at specific by hour at the high school and even at the middle school and by concept, and provide that reteaching and relearning that maybe in years past we didn't do. And as you can see it, when you follow the cohort of students, typically in 8th grade, we have about 34%, 35% of our students proficient on the math exam, and it goes up slightly when they're in 9th grade. But the results from that 1 year, you can see we doubled our percent of students that were proficient in 1 year of taking a full year and doing this collaboration. As you can see since then, our numbers have come back down to where they were because it was not sustainable. It has not been sustained since then. So if we want to know what's the proof that this actually works, this was part of our action research on collaboration and spending this time together and how much time is needed to make it a positive return on investment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite the principals up now to share a little bit about what happens during our collaboration time on our early release Mondays currently, and then what are some of the emerging results that we are seeing due to that.
And I would interject as you listen to the how each of these buildings are currently functioning. We completely understand that differences within buildings or between buildings sometimes varies. Not all of our buildings or grade levels are at the same place, and I have asked them to be honest about that and how or identify things that are working well as steps that they would be taking to continue to refine. So, Sarah?
So at the elementary level, what we've done is we've created like a 4-week rotation schedule, and we've taken the grade level teams, and then each grade level team each week will meet with a different team in the district, or in the building. So 1 week, like first grade might be meeting with the specialist teachers, the STEM, music, art, Phi-Ed, those teachers. Kindergarten might be meeting with our interventionists, so like reading and math intervention support or enrichment support. And then a second grade team might be meeting with our student services, or so school psychologist and school counselor. And at those meetings, the benefit is, a lot of times if we don't have that collaboration time, it's on the fly. Hey, Mike, I have this student that I want to talk to you about. We talk as we walk down the hallway, we create a plan, Mike goes and works with that student, and it's not a super defined work time. Whereas if we're in a collaboration space with our whole grade level and we're talking with our student services, school psych, school counselor, we're able to say, well, I have this student that has a family that's maybe getting divorced, could use some support because I'm starting to see some trigger behaviors. Well, then another teacher in that same grade level could say, well, I have a student who I'm seeing the same things, and instead of it being a one-on-one, they can maybe do some group work with the school counselor or school psychologist. And then with it being on a 4-week rotation, it gives them time for the school counselor or school psychologist to work with those students for 4 weeks, and then come back together and talk about what are we seeing, what progress are we making, do we need to shuffle those groups a little bit more flexibly, are you seeing improvements in the classroom? Those kind of conversations are able to happen grade level wide. Same thing with like specialists. I know the specialists sometimes feel like on this island because we have one STEM teacher, we have one art teacher, we have one music teacher, we have one media teacher, and they want to help teachers deliver some of those standards that they have to deliver, but they feel like they don't have that time to communicate and have those conversations. And one of the things that I've noticed since those meetings have happened, I'll walk into the art room, and I know at their collaboration meetings they were talking about how students were struggling with odd and even. So in art, Colleen Reedy is saying, all right, I need the even tables to stand up and do this, or I need the odd tables to stand up and do this. So they're bringing some of those concepts cross-curricular into other classrooms, and that wasn't able to happen until they're able to sit and have those defined, like collaboration times to have those conversations. That all make sense?
Mike, I'd like to move for a 5-minute recess, please.
Yeah, I think we're good with that. Do we have to make a vote on, do we have to take a vote, or we can break, let's just break. I agree.
Yeah.
This is a great presentation, but
Sorry,
I think
yeah.
we probably need a quick break here. All right, so
I'll pay
we'll
more attention in a
reconvene at 8:50.
8:50. Mics are still live.
I don't think it was
We only have like 2 minutes left. Where are we at?
8:50.
Jeez Louise. Can't take her anywhere. I mean, I'm okay getting through it. I'm not sure what they're presenting is the crux of the conversation that we're going to have tonight, but
Nobody else saw it.
I heard it though.
I mean, I heard it.
Way too much traffic through here now.
Yeah. It is kind of a different smell.
Regular Zoom, yeah.
All right, I think we have everybody back, so we're ready to resume. And I think we're gonna keep going with the presentation, get through all the slides, and then we'll just go around and ask questions. I think.
All right, so just continuing, at the intermediate school, you can see we have a sort of a similar schedule that the elementary does, and that partially because we share our specialists. And this is one of the refinements that came out of from last year, was to put together a schedule where we specifically had times and days, and it's really by week, blocked off, so that way our specialist teachers get to meet with every single grade level, but then they also get to meet across district K-12, and that's why it's a partnership with the other buildings. And why do we all need to be on the same schedule? Because our FIAD teachers, our music teachers, our CTE teachers across the district need to be able to get together as well. So they are able to do that once a month, and then they're meeting with the different grade levels on the other weeks of the month as well. Just a sample of, we have agendas for all of our PLCs, and here's just a sample agenda, and I've redacted student names and things like that that are identifiable, but these are all the topics this is 1 month of 4th grade. And as you can see, they're talking about social emotional, SABRS testing, and student check-ins and things of that nature with our student services. Then they're looking at the forward exam and, again, meeting with the specialist teachers and what's going on there. We then our review of our supplies and things for next year, our cardinal time interventions, and then again with student services, again a rescheduled meeting of who again are we looking at, and then finally our interventionists, Stacy Helders, Corey Morning, being able to strategically meet with them every month to make adjustments as we're progress monitoring our students on a weekly basis, in which students are in need of some support. Some emerging results, again, last year for 8 months, this was done at the 4K6 level, or 4K through 5 level, excuse me, that's a typo. And we got our annual report card out. And our annual report card, again, there was a lot of talk in the national media about learning loss and learning gaps that were forming during the pandemic. We, luckily, as a district, because of some of the safety protocols that we implemented, we were able to keep our doors completely open at our elementaries last year. From that, and then again, based on the collaborative time and the things that we were able to do during that collaborative time, our report card, when compared to all the other elementary schools in the state of Wisconsin, is academically, we achieved the highest level we've ever achieved. We were in the top 15% in the state. In overall student growth, we were in the top 4% in the state. And then when we look at our lowest academically achieving students, typically those are your special education students, and then our near special education but regular education students that really struggle. We are in the top 8% in the state. So we are definitely closing and accelerating our students' learning through this collaborative model. Mr. Eigel.
So at the middle school, we arrange a little bit differently. We are in our content area groups, or all of our math are together, all of our ELA folks are together, all of our social studies, so our content area groups. We also have agendas that we keep for each of our teams. As we talk about and as we look at it, we in our content area teams are looking at and answering those 4 questions that Michael went over earlier in the presentation. Here in the month of May, we're starting to get ready for our transitions and talk about transitions from year to year. We're finalizing our standards and which standards have and haven't we covered in each of our content areas. And so that's where you see some of the fast track math, some of the fast bridge stuff. Placement tests are going on. We're wrapping up our SLOs and PPGs. And those happen all with our content area and our standard level PLC groups. The next slide is some data that has come out of our math PLC. This has been one of our focus areas this year. Our data that we're looking at comes with the transition of 1 new math teacher at the beginning of the year who started late in the year, and then we transitioned to 2 new math teachers halfway through the year. Without our collaboration time, without our time to meet, I don't believe that we continue our learning, continue our growth model that we have throughout math. On the far left-hand side, the results are our spring of last year Fast Bridge and our spring of this year Fast Bridge test. We're about 9 percentage points higher on the top, and you can see that we are moving kids from the below basic and the basic up into our proficient and on track levels on the upper side. The light purple, 90% accuracy I'm predicting to be proficient on the Wisconsin Forward exam. The majority of the dark purple will also be proficient or generally have been proficient on the Wisconsin Forward exam also. So the middle slide there is just our winter score. Our winter 20 or this past January's Forward assessments. The far right hand side, or I'm sorry, is the 2021 winter to spring. The slide or the snapshot on the right hand side of the screen is our winter of 2022 to our spring of 2022, where we're seeing 34% of our students are on track, and now here in the spring with the transition of 2 new teachers, we're at 45% of our students. So we have grown our number of students that are proficient, and again we're shrinking that number of students who are below that benchmark area. And again, that's with the transition. The 2 new teachers coming in, they were able to talk, collaborate, work for a time period each Monday to figure out where they're at, where they're going, and where we're heading. And now we're working on our transition into next year. They've done well.
Mr. Figge from high school.
All right, for the high school. First off, I want to emphasize my experience is just at the high school right now, although some of what I'll talk about maybe transcends to some of the other buildings. But I want to talk logistically, I think, at first. Hopefully we can all agree education isn't a solo endeavor. We do better when we work as a community. 2 teachers working together on a class for students are better than 1, and 4 teachers are even better yet. And that's what this is really about. Logistically, if we look at what happens at the high school, and I think the other 3 buildings, time before school, time after school, there are a lot of tasks being asked of our teachers. I know at the high school, our teachers have coaching duties. Most teachers have students in the room before and after school. During this time, they're providing interventions, tutoring, they're on committees, they have IEP meetings, parent meetings. So if you look at the logistics alone, aligning schedules for teachers to get together during their time during the day is impossible with what we currently have. But we know that collaborating and teachers getting together to work for the betterment of students will actually benefit our students. In addition to that, the job has gotten more difficult in education. I think anybody in education, and I see Ms. Hollab nodding her head, anybody, and it's not a pandemic thing, anybody in education would agree the job has just gotten more complex. Teachers now not only focus on academics, but social emotional, mental health. In a lot of cases, they're acting as surrogate parents to students, they're mentoring students. They're data specialists. We're expecting them to be data specialists now. They're mentoring other teachers or aspiring teachers because, as you heard earlier, the hiring pool, especially for secondary, is down to 6 or fewer prospective teachers getting into the profession. And so we try and cultivate those relationships with our local universities as well and have student teachers. And what we're seeing more and more is teachers also have to be behavior managers, not only of their classroom, but in other areas of the school. So with that being said, if we can commit that collaboration is important, and we know that logistically, without providing time, it's impossible, I would hope that we would recognize that we need to provide something different. What you see up on the screen is currently how we're using that time at the high school. I will tell you, for a majority of our high school teachers, this has been the saving grace, and it's allowed us to push forward. You're going to see a lot of the things I just talked about for roles of teachers reflected up here. So you can see that we're working on some of the questions that are core and central to PLCs that Mr. Kosmolsky and Mrs. Dusick and Mr. Igo mentioned about how we provide learning for students. In addition to that, though, we talk about grading practices and equitable grading practices between teachers. Nothing looks worse and nothing is harder for a student than knowing that the teacher who's teaching the same class that you're taking is grading you differently. So we need to get our teachers together so they have time to have common practices, interventions for students. You can see some of the collaboration that's going on between not only our departments, because we're a little bit different than the elementary schools, but we have grade level collaboration that needs to take place, departmental collaboration we have between general education and special education. What a tenuous relationship that can be if they don't have time to collaborate for our students who are most at risk. Between our mental health providers, or counselors in our school psych, and our teachers, and I think something that gets lost a lot of time, our teachers and our parents, and being able to communicate with our families so that they are equal partners in our educational process. Mr. Igo talked about how we're collaborating between buildings as well. I don't think before we provided this time, we had more than 1 or 2 days during the year where our 6 through 12 teachers could get together and have meaningful conversations that have lasting change. So that's something that we've implemented this year with the addition of the early release. Some of the other things that I added up there were a focus on our social emotional learning. One of the things I came to you about in August was we were going to focus on, at least at the high school, what we called RCC, a short, relationships, community, and connections. Something that our student council also made a vision of theirs, and they did a phenomenal job. Part of that was reflected during this collaborative time where we could actually get teacher teams together and not just hold the status quo, but build new things. So we've talked about our enrichment committee, providing new opportunities for kids. I can show you the survey data that came back from both teachers and students, and 80% of our student body said that they made new connections with teachers at school, and about 75% said that they made new connections with a new peer or peer group at school. In addition to that, we have teams of students who are working during that time. We have our student support teams who are meeting together with parents, with outside supports. We have to work very heavily with the county. We have to work very heavily sometimes with law enforcement. So again, having time when we can get teachers who don't have obligations in the classroom, who don't have obligations for the millions of other things that they have to do, to meet together has been central for us. Can I have you go to the next slide? When we look at metrics of performance and how this is impacting things, again, this is pretty early in the adoption process of what we did this year. This is maybe an indicator of something that was impacted. So if you take a look at the current class that just took their ACT, which again is only one metric of success, it's only one class, but when we measured that class through the ACT Aspire back in 2021, so last year, they had a predicted composite score of 19.5. I can tell you that the current ACT results for this class are embargoed, but they exceeded that by more than 1.5 points. They had one of the highest scores that Prescott has ever seen since ACT became mandated for all students at a school. In fact, the second highest ever. They outperformed every predicted metric that we had given to them, I would attribute a lot of that to our teachers having the time to work together, both on an individual student level and as a cohort level. So that's from the high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, instructional time impact.
Thank you, principals. Yeah, so one of the things that was in our unacceptable means of the guiding change document was, one, accepting status quo, and two, not meeting state requirements. And I know there's a lot of buzz and talk of lost instructional time, and what does that look like? So I created a chart here of what are the hours of required instruction by DPI, currently on our 22-23 approved calendar, and then the over DPI required minutes that are currently on our calendar. So at the 4K level, we're over by 25 hours, 76 hours K5, and 32 hours at the secondary level. From 2010 to 2018, when we looked at our overall instructional minutes, this is sort of where we averaged out. There were years, especially last year, where the minutes were much lower, where the hours were much lower, but we're not looking at last year. Again, it was an anomaly. So, but from 2010 to 2018, this is where we pretty much were at all those different levels. And part of that was the need to build in snow days, which now we don't need to build in as much anymore because we have our innovative approach to intermittent dismissal of students, especially at that secondary level, because that's really where the impact was for the hours and whatnot. Rick, if you go to the next slide. So as this committee has met and we've discussed, one of the things that the committee has said, and I even asked the board at the last board meeting, is how close to those hours do we want to be? And the answer was as close as we can be. And the same thing has come out through that committee. There's no one on the committee that thinks we should be greatly slashing instructional minutes or hours. As teachers, we want to be in front of our students as much as possible. What we're really looking to do is to rake together some of our time on one day, so that way across the district we can have these collaborative meetings where we can work interdependently, again, trying to move ourselves to the next level. So one of the things that committee has talked about, and again, we gave that range to families, is how much time really is needed. Again, you guys saw the averages based on our current practice. The elementary and intermediate school is a higher level than what our high school and middle school are, but again, that's because of current practice. So what the team is looking at is, if you look at a 1 hour meeting, and 1 hour would start from the time that the kids stepped on the bus, like at the elementary or intermediate school. By the time you transition back to your classroom, you get a drink of water, you use the restroom, you get the resources you need. That's 10, 15 minutes already. So we're impacting that meaningful time that we could work together. The 1.5 hour impact, we believe, will still give us that ability to meet with our needed groups throughout the month as we have laid out, and then start some of that work to get that momentum going to carry it the rest of the week. So the 1.5 hour, what does that do? If we were to truly just take an hour and a half out of our day, this is what would happen to our hours. Hours would drop to below state requirements at both the 4K and the secondary level. And part of that, again, is because if we look at Mondays, is what this is based on. There's less Mondays than Fridays, so Fridays would have a bigger impact than this even. Our 4K currently is a half-day program, Monday through Thursday. Again, if we wanted to mitigate that impact on 4K, that program could be moved from a Tuesday through Friday program. And then 4K wouldn't even be part of that conversation. Again, some of that will come out in the options that we give to the board next month of what would that potentially look like. As you can see, at the elementary level, we would still be over the state requirement by more than 30 hours of instruction. And at the high school, we'll be just under. So we talked about adding minutes to the days, and then what would that impact do? Again, adding a 5-minute per day impact would get the secondary, the high school, and middle school just over the state required. A 10-minute would get us over by quite a bit more. The other part, and again, this was a strategic direction or strategic decision by the board, was to add the return to learn days just before school. And those return to learn days, those 2 days, though they're not in our official calendar, they are part of our instructional delivery. And that it counts for 13 hours at the K-12 level. And again, because of the half day, just a little bit less at the 6 hours at the 4K level. So looking at the total instructional package with those hours, as you can see, we are over the amount of hours than what we had previously had been at in most cases there. So again, when we talk about instructional impact, we do not want to be, and teachers are clear on this, they do not want to be in front of the students less. They want to be in front of the students as much as we've always been. We just want to provide a better learning environment and opportunity for our students as well. So those are potential impacts that again will come out in those options to the board. Is we are truly as an options team, and again some questions and things that we need answered, much like last time, is based on the survey, based on again the purpose of the collaboration. When will this again have that return on investment, if you will, for students? We truly believe, again, in alignment with the teachers and the families, is weekly, an early release, Mondays, and 1.5 hours. So those are sort of based on the direction the board's already given us, based on what the surveys have said, and based on the purpose and what the teachers have said they need. We believe are sort of some of the cogs that are going to lock into place, and we are going to build options around those, and what could those potentially look like. So some other constraints or things that we're looking at considering is, again, that common collaboration time needs to be district-wide. I know at one point the board did talk about, can it look differently at the secondary level versus at the elementary level? And potentially yes, but in theory, that could look different, but then again, that will minimize our impact, especially for our smaller PLCs, art, music, Phi-Ed, CTE, and hinder their ability to meet across the district. And really that's the where, again, they're getting that within content conversation and collaboration happening. Again, we're single-tiered busing, so that means at one time we're sending out our buses. And we would not have the ability to do two. Similar instructional hours, and again, trying to stay as similar as possible with the potential of even having more hours in the calendar. And then the options will have options that include childcare options for families. And those will look differently, and depending on the way that the board wants to go. I know one of the options, one of the things that we have now is sometimes, and it isn't a perfect even this year, is asking our aides to stay and to provide that. Again, part of what's come out of the surveys, though, is that one of the big misses is that we need our aides at the table. So if we still want to have options available to families, we're just going to have to look at some new partnerships or expansions of partnerships, and again, flesh some of that out and bring it to the board. So that way you can make that decision in June. Is this a go or no go? And then after that, we can work on that implementation and refinement of that. In the meantime, depending on the conversation that the board has here, the committee will start to look at families and collecting information about how many students would be potentially interested and impacted by child care or no child care. And again, how do we mitigate that for our families, and how do we work with them similar to how we've worked with our families over the last 2 years to, again, we know it's a shared burden, and for some families it's more than others, and therefore we understand that we need to work together to mitigate those. And that's where I'll leave it.
Thank you to the principals. Thank you, Michael. And I appreciate being able to have the full story out there. And now would entertain questions that the board has or direction.
Yeah. Pat, do you want to start this one? Do you have questions on anything that we saw? There's a lot of data here, a lot of information. Or initial thoughts on anything? I can go to Tanya first if you want.
I don't right now. No,
okay.
I don't.
Tanya, you want to go first?
Man, that feels like a pass.
Yeah.
No, I can start totally. I have some questions first and then kind of my thoughts in general, but currently, so the return to learn days, just questions on the presentation. You mentioned those 2 days. I just wanted to clarify, those are not required days, right, for students?
Correct.
Right.
They're
So
part
to
of
me-
our summer school programming.
So we get
Yep.
funding through summer school, so they count similar to summer school. So
Yep.
for me, those don't count towards minutes
Sure.
in the day
Yep.
because they're not required. It's all different. So that's just a clarity for me. Also, the childcare. How many? Because we asked this for our current model, and I did not think we had a lot of kids taking up our childcare option the last I asked, but how many, does anybody know, probably Sarah, how many kids around do childcare?
It fluctuates slightly at the intermediate school depending on the week. We're somewhere between 14 and 18 students.
And
for
that's-
grades 3, 4, and 5 combined.
The early release.
Yep, with the early release on Mondays. Sarah, I know has
It's a little higher.
It's 50 to 65.
50 to 65 kids
50
you have?
to 65 at the K2 level currently.
Okay, so quite a bit more there. Yep. And so for me, that's an important piece of it too, is to make sure that we do have childcare provided. And I know that you're looking at what do you need for June, and for me would be those kind of options. I'd like to see no cost options, minimal cost options, YMCA partner, whatever that looks like. But those are some options that I want to see, because childcare is for me needing to be part of the deal somehow. So that's important. And then, do we have a policy on time in school or anything like that besides just following DPI requirements? We don't have. I looked.
No.
I didn't see a specific one. I just
Not
want to
that
make
I'm
sure.
aware of, no.
Okay. I didn't think so. So I guess my other comment, and this just happens to do with the teamwork work that we do as a board, and this is our consultant agency, and we have used teamwork for, Rick, do you know how many years? I mean, for a long time.
Yeah, at least
Since
4.
Yeah, I was going to say
At
since
least.
2017, 18.
Yeah. And we have done trainings with them. We have followed all kinds of stuff that we have done. It's our onboarding practice. And one of the things that they make really clear in every training I've ever done with them is the role of a board and the role of an admin. And for me, and in line with Teamworks, the role of a board is to work on setting policy, governance, advocacy. That's our role. And so policy being part of that, and this not aligning with policy, we would be talking about this and approving this because of calendar, basically, is why it's a board issue. And it also is made really clear that the role of admin, administrators, the district administrator, has to do with management, district initiatives, and all of the things that we're talking about today. So for me, as a board member, I absolutely take what you guys are recommending very seriously. It is not my job to recommend how we meet the needs of our students. My job is to make sure that what you guys recommend aligns with our policy and what we're required to do. So that for me is really important distinction. And I just want to point out that the research is very strong in collaboration time with schools, with teachers, with staff, with families, with kids, that these things are really, really important in order to make schools function. I believe there was, and I tried to look it up and I couldn't find it because we have 1,000 things, but there was a study, a time study we did, maybe, I think, Mike, you probably did it. When I say we, I looked at it. It was like a year or two ago, and it was on the loss of teacher time and what teachers are doing these days compared to years ago. And even though like that was in the middle of COVID when we were looking at that, those things have not changed. When we come back into school, those social emotional needs are still significant. The things that are going on have not changed for staff members. If anything, I think it's increased. And so that's also an important data piece for me. The other thing is that as a board, I think as an administration, you guys have done a really good job in showing us the guiding change document. I have it pulled up here. You didn't go over it tonight, which is fine, but I will. And so it talks about unacceptable means, and we have gone over this and not asked, and I remember, Mike, multiple times you asking us, hey, is there anything to add? You need more guidance. Is this okay, acceptable means? And I look back, and I think it's been purposely brought up at 2 or 3 different board meetings within this last year, basically, actually since November, I think it was. And those unacceptable means are adhering to state laws. We're doing that. Create a calendar that increases operational costs, or at least it's a neutral kind of cost. That's what is happening. Not supporting the consensus of the group once it's reached, we'll support. Creating a calendar that does not support the collaboration time needed to move forward. That's what you're proposing. Accepting the status quo, adding additional time to teachers' workday. Those were the only unacceptable means, and I see this proposal aligning with all of those unacceptable means that as a board we discussed and helped put parameters on. So for me, overall, I feel really great about your proposal. I think it's needed. The research is extremely clear. Our teachers have been extremely clear. Thank you for showing us what you do. I wrote down things like social emotional, special education, intervention. I've heard some people say like, well, you have technology. Why do you, that's not what we're talking about here. So all of this collaboration is still really important and needs to happen. For me, recommendation-wise, so I can be super transparent on where I'm leaning, I don't need a lot more information. I need information on how can we provide childcare, what transportation looks like, that kind of stuff. I'm leaning towards the 1 hour to 1.5 hours, and that was based on the research, based on the data, based on all of that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm leaning towards. I worry about that 1.5 and the minutes of what that does to our calendar. So that's something that we would have to see a proposal on. I, again, don't believe those return to learn are the same. I think those are separate, they're not required, it's different. Or we require them and it's part of our calendar. I mean, whatever that looks like. I think childcare is a must for me, and looking at the days, it was Mondays for teachers strongly. It was a very close second for families, so I'm really comfortable with leaning towards Mondays. And then the other question was early release versus a late start. Or I'm sorry, early release versus, late start. Initially I was thinking late start, Mondays, that'd be great, kids for kids. But then, I saw the data and thought that's not what staff is asking for, and that's not what families are asking for. So I'm great with the early release. I think it should be weekly and consistent. So that's where I'm at with all of it. That's all I've got.
Steve?
Sure, I think Tanya and I don't align all the time, and this may be one of those times.
I know.
Teamwork is great, but in my opinion, life just isn't black and white. So we have to, make some decisions not solely based on that. First of all, thank you for all the work the administrative staff and the teachers have done on this. I know it's been a ton of work and a lot of research, and I understand it. I get it. My personal opinion, I'm 100% on board. Totally makes sense. The teachers need it. The teachers want it. I believe it's better for students, but not everybody agrees with that. So my first question that I would ask is, what do parents think? Do they want it or do they not? And based on the survey information that I saw, we don't have that answer. The second question I would ask is, do parents understand what you presented to this board previous to tonight? Do they understand it? Do they understand why this is needed? I don't think we have the answer to that too. And without that, I can't make a decision, because if 75% of the parents in the district, for example, the respondents that we had said, yeah, we want it, we get it, we understand it, great, I'm behind that. 75% come back and say, we don't know what you're talking about, we don't like it, we think our kids are not going to be in the classroom, whatever the reasons, then I think we have to really consider and seriously question why. Why don't they understand it? You guys may do everything you can to message this in these meetings and that sort of thing. Somehow there might be a disconnect. I think the survey was a big disconnect. It didn't answer the questions that I needed to have answered to make a decision. We can look at other options. Michael, you mentioned this as far as coaching, for example, and doing things after school, if you will. And I know I'm going to hear a couple of eye rolls here, but just bear with me. Let's say staff stays late on Mondays, okay? let's say they stay an extra hour and a half or 2 hours after the school day. And we all know staff, it's not just when the kids leave the classroom. There's a lot of other things that staff are doing in the buildings before they go home. Okay, but let's see if we can figure out a time. Let's say we adjust the contracts and their pay to equate for that hour and a half or 2 hours. So they're still getting paid for it. So they're not doing, it's not additional time that's not being accounted for financially. But then you run into obstacles. You run into coaching obstacles. Figure a Monday afternoon, that might make some adjustments. But maybe we need to look at some other options if we can't figure out a way to make it work during the day. And again, personally, I think it makes a lot of sense. But I don't sit up here just to vote for myself. I have to consider the opinions of our constituents. I know people up here are going to say, well, we're elected to make decisions. Well, you're right, we are. But we're also here to understand what our constituents want and to make sure they understand what we're asking of them. And I don't think that clarity is there. Not to say it's anyone's fault in this room. It just seems like to me there's a little bit of a miss there. Anyway, the data, everything else, I'm on board with, but I think we've got a couple more questions to answer. Thank you.
Vicky?
Yeah, the childcare options, I think we need to come up with as many options as we can, see what's all out there. You all have had very specific examples, Mr. Ego, with the math teachers. That change right in the middle of the school year, and then those teachers finally getting the chance to sit down and have conversations and figure it out, and you saw those math scores go up. Michael, you had it in the past where you did a study and it proved that you saw the numbers go up. So I believe too that it's needed. That's what you're asking for, and that's your job. That's not my job to know that. It's just we have to figure out how to have the least impact on everybody, and I know that's exactly what you're trying to do. So I think we're almost there. But all of this that I heard tonight was way more in depth, and really now I think the understanding for me is there as to what's happening. I had no idea that, like, the specialists, so physical education, music, all of those specific groups of people, like, you didn't have Mr. Canfield being able to talk to the elementary or the middle school music. Like, that just never happened. And I think of all the things he does for the high school students and making that available to the middle school students. Like, that maybe was never an option, but now they're getting this chance to have these conversations. Same with physical education, same with all of that stuff. So I think bringing all of that forward now and explaining it, for me, has made it a lot clearer as to what this really looks like. I never doubted that you needed the time. I think it's amazing what you do, and I mean, we see it on the news all the time, the struggles in schools, the struggle with teachers, and all that's going on. So I think if we can just, like Steve said, there's a few other things maybe need to be answered, and maybe that clarity that I got tonight, hopefully then that clears it up for some for some parents who weren't really sure of what it was all about. And I did receive some questions about what exactly are they asking? Are we adding on? Is it the same amount of time? What exactly are they looking for? So it may require, I don't know, some more information, I think, but I believe that you need it. We just need to come up with some really good options, I think, that work for everybody, or at least work for as many people as we can make it work for.
Shay, did you want to jump in on this? Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yep, go ahead. Oh, you need a mic.
Mike, give the mic.
I stole it.
Two mics.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that I think collaboration time is very important. I see the effects of it every single day, and I can tell that it benefits our teachers, but it also benefits the students, and just like having teachers be able to connect on, like, especially grading with teachers teaching the same classes but doing it differently, or like students that are in two different, teachers' classes. So I think that helps a lot. I'm curious, on the slide before this, it showed the 5 minutes per day versus the 10 minutes per day impact. I'm wondering which one you're kind of leaning towards, and if, because with the return to learn hours, that's with the 10-minute day impact.
No, actually, they're separate. So
Okay.
the 5-minute and 10-minute are their own, and then it's, if you want to look at it as a whole package with the return to learn, which Tanya has made clear, I don't want to see that as a package. So if you just look down the column of 10 minutes, and again, this is based on if it's weekly, an hour and a half, but we add 10 minutes to the day. And again, part of that would be implementation of, is it 5 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon? Is it all in the afternoon? That would still have to go part of that implementation. But if there was 10 minutes added and we did a weekly hour and a half, you'll see that the secondary would be 16 hours over requirement, 60 hours K-5 and 20 hours at the 4K.
And is there one you're kind of leaning more towards? Is having 6 or 12 only 1 hour over pretty dangerous, or is it
I think the committee is that's unacceptable to us.
Okay.
That we would definitely be looking at the 10-minute.
Okay, perfect. And I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
I'll add one more. If we were to ask parents an additional question, I asked before, if they want it, first of all, if they understand it, but, if they don't want it, why? Right? What if all the parents come back and say, hey, childcare is the issue? All right, great. This board can say, super, we can take care of that. We can come up with a plan to fix that so you don't have to worry about it. Just one more thought, sorry. And keep in mind, we're not voting on this tonight. This is an information discussion, so anyone listening out there or whatever, it's, we're not taking action tonight, so.
I'd like to just comment on those, the things that you had talked about, Steve. So one of them about, adding the additional time. And again, one of the, and I understand the TeamWorks thing, you maybe want to revisit that as a board. But one of them was that, there would not be a financial impact. The other part was not adding time to the day. And that's, if you were to add above and beyond the 40-hour work week with time and a half pay and things like that, obviously would be a great increase to taxpayers. And it would violate stay within the 8 hours. And that's why that wasn't explored. The other part of, when I met with the 2 board members and we went over the survey, and the survey was quite a bit longer, and we shortened it down. And part of that I think it's been, and I think, I don't want to speak for the 2 of you, you can jump in if you want, but to ask parents, do you want the best for your students? What parents going to say? No. We don't want the best learning environment, educational for our students, and that the board accepting in February the guiding change, and that we're not going to stay at status quo, that we basically have already indicated to families that we, as a board, you have indicated to families that you believe School D is the school you want for our students and our district, and that we are moving forward with this. Just we need to work in partnership with them of, again, making that a reality where there's shared burdens.
Yeah, I appreciate your response and understand part of that. You just said partnership.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think some parents feel like they're in a partnership. And that's for this board. And, Mike, you've been on the board longer than I have. I've been here starting 9 years now. We've heard the whole time before that, I'm sure Mark Helmer could tell us the same thing, that the school board does not communicate, that the school board does not listen to parents. It's always about communication. We talk a lot about that. And we're not perfect in that, and we certainly strive to be better. It just feels like this was a miss, not intentional by any means. I don't believe that at all. I just think we could have gotten a little more information and allowed parents and families to really express their thoughts. Regardless of if they agree they want the best school in this, because everybody probably is going to want that. But, if there's something like this that we believe will be improvement and help teachers and help students, but if they don't believe that, why? That's just what I'm saying. I just don't think we mined deep enough when we had an opportunity to communicate. Not that we can't do it again or whatever, but those are my concerns anyway.
Would you have been more comfortable with a question like, do you understand the proposal, and if you're not for it, why?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would have given them a voice to say, hey, yes, I do understand it, but I don't like it because now I don't have childcare, or whatever the reasons are, you know. It might just be I mean, there are a lot of people that believe more time in front of the teacher is better education. Obviously, planning for teachers is important, and so we need to figure that out. And you know, it's a balancing act, of course.
So those are still things that we could ask. I mean, because it's not saying, do you agree with this or not? Because I would be really clear, like, what percentage of teachers said that this is something that they need and value?
85%.
85%. So if 85% of our staff are saying we need this to do our jobs, and 60% of parents say, I don't agree with this, I'm going with the 85% of educators that are highly trained in this saying they need this. So that's where I'm uncomfortable asking that question, and that's completely me. But I'm really okay with saying, if you don't understand the value of this or why this is important, tell us more, and what is the hardship and what makes this something that is hard for your family or whatever, and what can we do about it? That's, to me, a great problem-solving space.
No, I agree with your comments. I hesitate to say that we wouldn't ask, do you want it or not? I mean, why wouldn't we?
I would feel pretty untransparent with families if the majority said they don't want it, but yet we didn't, or I didn't choose to not listen to that.
But that's a data point that we don't have. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
I want to jump in on this one because I was part of the group that helped with the parent survey. And just to give some context, Tanya and I met with Rick and a couple administrators to put that together. And to their credit, they did have a lot more questions in there, a lot more information about what this was trying to accomplish. And we felt we wanted to try to strip it down to make it as simple and easy as possible, and to get the data that we felt we needed. Whether we got it right, you know, I think that's the debate right now, is that did we get it right? And after reflecting a little bit, I'm not sure we did either. You know, I can see why parents would be turned off with how the survey was handed to them, and they didn't get an option to have a yes or a no. Do you support this or not? When we went through the process, it was really, how can we find out what information we need that parents will be least impacted, I think, is kind of how we tried to frame it up. Again, I'm doing some on-the-fly self-reflection here on camera, and I'm not. So I want that to be really clear. I think we did the best we could with kind of the time that we had to try to just get information that we felt that we would need if we were going to move forward with a proposal. What would parents be willing to accept if, you know, we had to, giving, you know, an early release or a late start, how long, how frequent, all that stuff. Those are the data points we were really looking at. I agree with your point, though, that I think, you know, from a parent perspective, allowing the parents to answer a question of yes or no, I support this, maybe that's an opportunity we missed. It's tough information to have because it could be very contradictory to what is needed based on what teachers are saying. But that's the board's job. The board's job is to make those tough decisions. And if there's a polarizing number out there that there's support or there's not support from both sides, and it's opposite, then we're going to be the ones that have to make the decision. Or we got to do a better job of communicating what we're doing with that time. And I think that's what this proposal was, or this presentation was tonight, was to allow us to understand how the time's being used now, because I think that was kind of a mystery a little bit, and how is it going to be used? How is it going to be used next year? And that has to be really clear to parents, to us, to get on board. How is the time being used now? And you guys, building by building, it's different. It's going to be different. It should be different. I wouldn't expect it to be the same across the board. I would expect there to be plans and ways to report back how things are going and what is happening in each building. I think those are important things to know and important things for parents to understand. So that I did want to, on the parent survey, did you guys have anything else? I'm kind of all over the board right now. I just wanted to jump in on that parent survey. I agree with what I've seen tonight. I have no doubt that the time that we have here that we want that the administration is proposing would be well used. I do see that, and the teacher survey. I know the previous survey that we saw wasn't complete. We have a higher response rate, a little bit more data. I haven't run the complete numbers, but it looks like there's about a 6% no response rate still, and that could lead up to, I think it was around 20% that might be indifferent or don't think this is necessary. I'd like to break into that a little bit deeper just to see where that's coming from. From the people I've talked to, from the teachers that I've talked to, it's being used in many different facets and in different ways in the buildings. I'm just looking at my notes here. Talked about documenting, and so from a parent perspective, I think we're all on the same page here that if child care is, I think, something that we got to look at, guys. So what can we do from a child care perspective? And again, what's the least impact? I think busing schedules. How does that look? If we were to give you, what do you need from us right now? Do you need more,
Well, I think
a couple options here?
Well, let me summarize back. I think what we have is at least a proposal, right? Based on, is it going to be, how frequently would it be? And it looks like we're aiming for weekly. The time, somewhere between 1 hour and 1.5, and it be early release. What we still have to figure out now would be busing, because we're one tier. Currently, it leaves early. And students that walk or families can pick up, and then we now know that there are 14 to 18 students that are staying after. We have childcare, and was it 50?
50 to 65.
Right. The buses could leave at 3 o'clock. No change, or they could leave early. What that means for us, though, is implementation. If the bus leaves at 3, we have, other than walkers or families that pick up, maybe a higher childcare burden. And then what I heard, I think, from Vicki was, is it going to be a no-cost option, a minimal cost, or is the burden going to be placed on the family? And so those are things that I think we have to follow up, because the implementation, there's a lot of parameters. We're working with the YMCA, we're working with the state. How big, how many kids can we have? Are we going to use aides? That goes to things I think management has to do. But what the board probably would need to weigh in on is, are we going to cover that out of the budget? Are we going to try to partner with the YMCA or have our staff, who are vital to this collaboration, assist us? Meaning aides do work the full day till 3 o'clock. They could still do that. The job description would be different. That will also have ripple effects. So I think there's some implementation that we'd have to come back, mainly around busing. Is it 3 p.m. or a little bit early? And then be able to collect some additional information about the understanding. I think we can tie it to tonight's presentation. There is a website that is up with frequently asked questions, and that's been up and continues to grow. And I think we'll hear some comments coming out of this meeting that we can continue to make sure that communication's out there.
I have one more question based on the comment you just made and something Michael said before. When we talk about full-time teachers who are on what we would call a contract, they're salaried employees, correct?
No, they have specifics of their work day is defined as an 8-hour with 30-minute duty-free lunch, and they have 188 days in their contract, which includes 3 days that are holiday pay. So no, they're not salary. They are.
So they punch in every day? I mean, just help me understand that, I guess.
Rick, that's a question for you.
Well, it's just your employee handbook has articulated what a work day is. And so it's the number of days, hours, and conditions of that.
So that's a minimum max, or they have to hit that number exactly?
The only option is we have a provision in there for occasional after-school meetings. I don't think this would fit as occasional.
Well, so we know we could change the handbook. My reason I bring this up is you mentioned a time and a half, Michael, and I don't think that would apply. This might be something to discuss as well when you talk about cost, whether they're salaried employees or whether they're hourly employees based on handbook or contract.
Well, I did want to talk about that a little bit too. The way we're kind of making up the lost time is by adding time to the day probably. And we're looking at, likely option is 10 minutes a day.
10 minutes of instructional time a day.
10
It would
minutes.
still be within the contract. So just for rough numbers, let's say we did an hour and a half, 90 minutes. We add 10 minutes 5 days a week onto what we currently have. That's 50 minutes. So the difference is 40 minutes over a week's time or 5 days. So what we're really talking about is 8 minutes a day. That's really the difference.
But the hours would stay the same. It would be those 8 minutes less at the end of the day.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because you're saying we're not doing 10 minutes extra on Mondays if we go Monday.
Well, we would adjust our, let's say we just add it all to the end of the day right now. Right now at the intermediate school, bell rings at 2:50, it'd ring at 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
So it'd ring at 3 o'clock. Monday would be an hour and a half before that, so it'd be 1:30.
Okay.
Or currently right now it's ringing at 12:50. So it's 40 minutes later than what it currently is,
Okay.
because we're not proposing a 2-hour early release like we've been piloting. The proposal will be either the hour or the half or the hour.
So, but it does add time. I mean, it adds time to a teacher's.
It's still within the 8-hour day, because teachers 7:30 to 3:30 is the contract.
Yep.
It's student contact
It's student
time,
contact
but their
time
hours
within
are
that
still.
time.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now at the
So
elementary,
they just,
intermediate
now they're having more student contact time and less.
prep.
Well, not
So we're
necessarily
taking-
more, because we have an hour and a half release day. So it's not necessarily more student contact time. We're trying to spread out some of that loss.
It's
So
different,
it's-
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the slide that's up there, right, it is one of those things. It's a lot of moving parts. But I think that the biggest challenge we would have, and I don't think, to be honest, if the idea is to move the goalpost and try to figure out how we would talk about implementation of extending the handbook for an hour and a half after school, I can guarantee you financially we can't do it. Logistically, we can't do that planning between now and June. What I can say is if you're interested in gathering more information about childcare, busing, and some additional questions about yay, nay, and do you understand it, that's definitely something that can be provided between now and June.
But see, you just answered some of my questions, at least. You know, I just threw an idea out there for doing an hour after school or whatever. I mean, now we understand that the financial impact would be that we probably couldn't support that. So
Right.
that's important.
The wheels would fall off, I guarantee you.
But anyway, it was just an idea. So.
And Mike, I just wanted to bring up, I think you were still in a similar position, but we added student contact days to the calendar not all that long ago, was it?
We added 15 minutes to the teacher contract. That was in 2017-18. We added that to the teacher contract. At the elementary level, most of that time went into student contact time because at the elementary you cannot leave students unsupervised.
Right.
At the high school and middle school level, there was less of an impact of contact time because the students can be somewhat, or Mr. Igo can watch 350 children at the same time in the cafeteria, right? So they just have more time in the mornings because that's really when, as Mr. Figge talked about, that is when they have their intervention time. It's before and after school, before the official beginning and ending of the school day. That's when they're intervening with their students at the secondary level.
So I'll just go back to the parent survey quick. Can we look at a follow-up survey or something along those lines with maybe a couple more questions for clarification? Is that reasonable, or?
I think we have to, only because what I would say is we would start with, based on this discussion, and the information we have, we already asked what's the least invasive to disrupting your family life. Now we know that what can be tolerated. Now what we want to do is say, you can tolerate it, do you understand it, and do you really support it, if you had an option? And then also, do you prefer busing at 3 or at 1:30? And what about childcare? And I think we'd have to talk about 3 options. If you're gonna need childcare, would you take us up on it, or do you have it outside? So those are some of the things that we would have to, I think, would be helpful for us to bring forward to you between now and June.
Again, this is information discussion, so we're not making any motions here, but I got a lot of feedback since the last meeting. I expect to get more, and all feedback is welcome, so feel free to spread it out to the rest of the board members too. So
It is.
Yeah, what do you think you're the
all right. Anybody else have any comments here?
I'm good, thank you.
Mike, do you think you have enough to go from for next month?
Plenty.
All right.
We want to talk
So-
about your hours and your contract, Michael, or, no, I'm just kidding.
I
I
do want
do
to.
recall the board saying back in February, we don't want this to take a lot of time.
No, I do want to be clear though. June is the month that you want to have action on, and is that the latest possible, or can we have? I feel like we're going to need another information and discussion, which means we might need a special meeting to talk about that in order to act on it. So I don't want to put all of this on next month. So as a board, I think we got to understand when we're going to get more information. Have an information and discussion on that, and then be ready to vote whenever this needs to happen. I don't think we should do this all at once.
Can I ask, is it possible to separate one of it is a calendar decision, and the other part is about logistics. And so if I was a family member, and this is a big impact for families, we recognize that, right? I would want to know that information sooner than later so I can help make plans. I mean, some of the logistics, can't we figure that stuff out for the next month?
I think it might roll all as, it intertwines though. That's,
Well,
if
with
the
busing,
logistics of it.
Yeah, with the busing, it would make
Yeah.
a big difference.
Sure. Then I would rather have a special session, because I think families need to know by June. That gives them, a month and a half, and teachers, and,
Yeah, my recommendation is, if you're going beyond June, would be problematic, both just from a parent who has, if you have children, you're trying to figure out what will that mean to me. The later you go, July is really tough, so I would say, but we have graduation, a lot of end of school things that it would be, I would recommend after the 15th, so that you would do a 15th and the week of the 20th.
Okay. So you're after June 15th, do a
Yeah, I don't
special?
think we could put anything in front of it and get you what
And
you
then we
need.
have, wait, the 15th is our next board meeting.
Put us
Right.
after.
that's what we're
What I'm
saying.
just saying is, if you want 2 meetings, I would go after.
Okay, so 15th is the regular board meeting. We'd probably have this, likely have it as information and discussion on the 15th, and then try to schedule a second board meeting after that to vote on.
If that's what you guys need, yeah.
So that's tentative, obviously, but I think that's probably what we should be thinking about.
It would be good to set that up sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because
So try to make sure your calendars are cleared on the 22nd.
mine is not.
Okay, then
So,
we'll work with
Maria
our,
will
Okay.
help.
our administrative assistant to come up with a doodle.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say that word. All right. Can we move on? Are we done?
Any last? Okay.
All right, let's get on to item C, PHS choir trip.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentations. They were very informative, guys. Appreciate it.
Ms. Camerath, good to see you.
have a couple slides. Just here to present on the Las Vegas choir trip. This will be our 3rd trip coming up next spring break. We're really looking forward to it. And if you have any questions about the student perspective, you could ask Shay, and she could speak to the merit of the trip because she was on the last one. So we're looking to take another week-long trip, just under a week. We do some volunteering at the homeless shelter, serve a meal. We do a clinic at UNLV and take in some shows and some different forms of entertainment, go hiking in the desert. It's a great trip.
And is that everything?
That's it?
All right. So did Shay go on this one, you said?
Yeah.
Shay, do you have any comments on this? Is this worth it?
Oh gosh, yeah. And it was like really cool from a musical standpoint, but also just from a personal standpoint. I think like the best part was volunteering at the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. So that's like the kitchen for the less fortunate, and that was really impactful for us to see that. And I mean, we just go to so many cool shows and stuff, and to go on a spring break with your best friends. So yeah, I think it's a great trip.
Shay's "Oh gosh, yeah" has me sold.
All right, yeah, I guess that's a, sounds like this might be a go. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item D, proposed elimination of limited flex spending benefit.
Yeah, how's this for a riveting topic? But it is one of those things that there's a lot of legacy programs that sometimes create more work and costs, but aren't actually being used. So as you know, we have a high deductible healthcare plan. We do have an HSA, a health savings account. That health savings account can be, some of it is populated by the district, and then employees can contribute up to IRS amounts. Those can be used for medical, pharmacy, and glasses, hearing aids, and it's taken care of, and it's at the IRS discretion and rules. The flex account had been something that was used for childcare and medical and pharmacy, but because of there's new rules about how they conflict, really about the only thing left is to populate it for childcare. However, with the new IRS ruling, you can deduct directly and get your credits on your tax return. So the flex spending isn't something that is as maybe useful to our staff. Currently, we do not have anybody using it for the last 2 years, but we are charged a fee from the banking institution to continue to hold that account. And so our new finance director has asked, it's obviously a liability for us. We have to have it in, it's currently in the handbook. We're paying a fee for something that's not being used, and tax exempt status is still available to our employees, just in a different way. And so we would like to recommend that it be a perk or a benefit that we no longer offer. So this for information and discussion. We did give you a write-up from Sue Gertis, talks a little bit about the handbook and how it's currently used. And our recommendation is that we do away with something that's not really being used.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
I mean, it looks like it hasn't been used in a couple of years, and I guess if anyone has any concerns, let us know. We'll vote on it next month.
And it's $2,000, it looks like, right, that we pay?
No, that's there's some forfeiture dollars that are still in there.
Gotcha.
Just, yeah.
Rick, this is a handbook change.
It ultimately would be something that in the handbook we say these are some programs that we allow, so we would be asking for that in the fall to be no longer
Okay,
part.
so are you asking that the board makes the decision next month? Or does this need to come to the
I
board?
mean, if you need more time, but it would be nice just for us to have the handbook forward. And
so it's a board vote next month, and then it gets removed from the handbook. That's all. I'm just wondering if it needed to come to the board.
If we do vote on it next month, can we put some language in there explaining when it would take effect, like it would be effective as soon as it comes out of the handbook, because otherwise we've got a few month lag of
Sure.
where we're kind of contradicting ourselves if we don't do that.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, last item, item E, discussion on whether to allow Market and Johnson the option to self-perform.
Yeah, so Market & Johnson is our project manager. Wanted to thank Pat Block for sitting in on a conference call with Mike Hoyka and I as we had River Valley Architects, Market & Johnson. We looked at all of the construction when we're going to be letting out bids. As you know, both on just kind of the time of year for us to do a majority of the work for infrastructure will be targeted for summer of 2023. Oh, time to go. All right, so that was an over-under bet, sorry. So what we are asking is that Market & Johnson is getting the bids ready for work that could happen during the school year. Some of the things that we learned on the talk is, on the conversation, is that, for example, all the electrical panels, kind of the old fuses at the middle school, the lag time is 52 weeks. That's a year. So we are going to purchase certain things and store them before a vendor actually would be on site. One of the things that Market & Johnson, initially, some of the things that we talked about would be that they would not self-perform. And that was based on some experiences that the board has had. But Market & Johnson, one of the things that we have two vendors or cooperation of, there are certain tasks, things like paving sidewalks, doing railings, installing doors, putting in the new hardware, that they could do, and we wouldn't have to, they could do it quicker than trying to put it out for bid, and doesn't require architectural designs or even state review. And so I've asked Pat, after having sat in on that, a recommendation or some discussion about how would we put parameters about when we would allow Market & Johnson to do some self-perform and get some low-hanging fruit projects done this summer. As we continue to put out bids. So, Pat, do you mind kind of spearheading
Sure.
a little bit about what parameters you would recommend?
Yeah, I think the negativity around allowing a general contractor to self-perform is there's an opinion that the district or the owner doesn't get a competitive advantage, right? So that's always a concern of a lot of people is how are they being competitive? I don't think the concern lies in Market & Johnson's craftspeople and their commitment to quality and their ability to be safe. It's more about the competitive advantage type thing. So when there are smaller projects that are hard to define and hard to put into kind of written narrative or scopes of work to put out on the street for bid, a lot of times those numbers can come back and they're all over the place. It doesn't give you a high level of trust with the numbers. There's, I think, risk to the district of cost overages and a lot of that good stuff. So I think there's a few things we can do with Market & Johnson to allow them to self-perform the work, to maintain a competitive advantage. They would still bid, if you will, or competitively procure any materials that they use, right? So if they're going to pour concrete, they'll get competitive pricing on that. I think that would be all open book, visible to the district. We would be able to see, anything and all that, that we would want. Another couple ideas is just to simply have Market & Johnson put forth a schedule of their craft labor rates, right? So if they're going to, deploy a journeyman carpenter for an hour, what rate is that at? What's their overtime rate? So that we understand that it's within, kind of market parameters and we know what we're paying for. And then with their pricing, they would give us estimates on anticipated hours spent and then, cost not to exceed. So Rick, I don't know if you want me to go, any deeper in there, but.
Well, I think just maybe for the rest of the board, what's the temperature of, kind of partnering with Market & Johnson under certain conditions like that, as long as Mike Hoyka, myself, and maybe Pat as your representative would be able to kind of set parameters of when it's acceptable or when we're going to go out for the bigger projects.
Steve, do you have any comments?
Just a couple clarifying questions, I guess. So when we talk about this, this is part of our referendum dollars, correct? This is part of the
Exactly.
overall project.
Correct.
Are there, you mentioned something in here about minimal spend. Do we have a ballpark of what this total would, is it $50,000? Is it $500,000, you know, of these items? Do we have any idea what that dollar amount might look like?
Yeah, we didn't go into that level. So on this talk, they just said there are certain things that they don't think could get done this summer based on the lag time of getting either construction companies or a bid out. And so one example would be the entranceway over at the middle school to the gym. That ramp has to be redone, re-poured, and a new handle, or a new railing. They have the personnel and the ability to do it, and they said, would you want us to consider it? And I said, I don't have the authority at this time. I want to bring it back to the board for that discussion.
Well, and Pat could disagree with me, but it seems like I've done this in past career, and there can be some cost savings there too, kind of depending on, you know, especially timing and, you know, if they've got people available or looking for something to do, essentially, let's get them on this project. We'll get this one small piece done and move on. So, you know, I guess I just want to make sure it doesn't cost us more money, but you know,
No,
I understand the need for it anyway. So.
Yeah, and I think you pointed out a good one specific. There's always the risk, right? And so I think that's where Pat was kind of at least helping to say we should set some parameters. But there are some efficiencies by them having either laborers that are close by, as well as just being able to knock some of these things out so the bigger projects and the bids can go out. And we will be looking at some summer bids and then also January of 2023 as the primary large set of bids that'll go out.
Now, I will caution you, just in my mind, you mentioned that we said we would not allow them to self-perform through the process of, you know, working with Market and Johnson and the referendum and everything else. I just want to make sure we're not stepping beyond something that we've already made commitments or promises to. So,
I actually don't recall that, to be honest with you. I think maybe a discussion was had as we'd want them to competitively price. You know, if they were going to do concrete work, I think my recollection was, you know, the discussion was sure, but competitively price that out.
yeah, I don't have it memorized either, but Dr. Spikuza just said it, so.
Yeah.
But if that's not true, great. That cleans that up too, so maybe we'll just clarify that too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vicki?
Yeah, it's a tough season, construction season going on around there outside, and people are already booked and busy. I mean, things are already happening, so trying to get these things started this summer. These smaller projects are going to be really hard to round people up. I mean, people around here are probably very aware of storms and damage, and even just getting a local contractor to, you know, replace your roof, come out and look at your roof or your siding is difficult. So if they've got the manpower and the ability to take on some of these small things and get them started, yeah, I think as long as we, like Pat had said, if we can get rates as to what they're charging per hour for each, you know, for their concrete, for their electrical, whatever they need, you know, their bricklayers, whatever, as long as it's competitive and we know that, and if it does have then obviously the potential to save us money, then for sure, I think we need to have them go forward.
Tanya?
Yeah, I just generally agree. I think having some kind of matrix with pricing, so you kind of have a guideline. We don't have to prove everything, but we know what their cost is. We can compare it to local, you know, whatever what we're used to, and then from there, I think they should get stuff done when they can, and that's great for me.
Right. I mean, they really should be, you know, Market and Johnson, whether it's self-perform or not, should be acting as an advocate of the district, right, and our best interest in mind. So, you know, that is their job. There's a few things I think we got to do just to you know, make sure that it's open book and transparent and visible, and if we can do that, I think it's a good thing.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page here, Pat. I don't want to give you too many accolades here, but I mean, having Pat kind of represent us from a district on the board as a board member, working with this, kind of being in the profession helps too. So I think you'll be able to help kind of keep an eye on things, make sure that what is market competitive and are we on the right track. So appreciate you stepping up. All right. We are on to item 8, recognition of visitors. Is there anybody in the audience that would care to be recognized?
Tracy Collins, Prescott City. I'm also the director of New Adventure, so I'm going to put about 3 different hats on. If you lose me here, let me know. I wanted to say about the information discussion about early release that, let's start up here. Teachers need the prep time. Yeah, okay, you're going to approve that. I'm good with that. The 4K, logistically, that's a nightmare. So if we could move 4K off the day that's early release, that would be fabulous, because lunch for those little kids and things when it's cut into those hours is bad. Childcare. So this year it was a mid-year change. So we offered our parents, if they wanted to have their kids come to our daycare at the early release time, we added an additional $11. We typically release our fall enrollment in May, but we're waiting on your guys' decision on what you're gonna do to release our fall enrollment so we can adjust our prices. Right now, I believe there's about 20 of my kids from the daycare center that stay and then come at 3 o'clock. If you choose to do the early release, we're not giving the option of you can or you can't. I mean, they can choose that, but it's all gonna be the same rate. We're just gonna take all of our children. And that's a max of 32. So that will take a huge chunk off of the child care need that you guys have right now. I can't speak to the other daycares in town, but I could see them following suit if we knew it was coming ahead of time. Then we went to the, sorry, I gotta put these back on. If you're gonna add 10 minutes of instructional time, I beg you, please put it at the end of the day, not the beginning. Mornings are horrible for children. And the teacher pay. I think that Steve was onto something. I realize you guys probably couldn't make that decision this year to change everybody's contract to add that. But I don't know a single teacher that actually only works 40 hours a week. In fact, at 9:30, I got a text that my son's kindergarten teacher added me a seesaw message I need to check when I get home. So she's still working, it's 9:30 at night. I think that teachers are highly undervalued, not necessarily by you, but just in general, in the public, of what they put in for time for their jobs that they do not get paid for. And that is totally unfair. They went to the same amount of schooling as everybody else that has a 4-year college degree. They did their internship for free, essentially, and there are people out there that get paid way more for putting in that time, and they get their time and a half and that thing for the same amount of education. There are a whole bunch of people that will disagree with me on this, but they just don't get it. I did want to say, in early education, we run a super high quality daycare center by the standards. We do our own curriculum prep. When we have the staff, we give our staff 2 hours of curriculum prep every week without the children. They get to come out of their classroom, somebody takes over for them. They produce an enormously better curriculum when they have that 2 hours outside the classroom to do it. It affects the kids 100%. I get it that it's hard, but it's got to be done. I do think that doing it after the school hours, after kids left in the future, might be something that needs to be considered though. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Hi again, my name's Craig, rural Prescott. So a couple things here that have been brought up. You know, Mike, you had mentioned that you did some self-reflection. Difference being you had to do it on camera, I got to sit in the back and do mine. I appreciate that, okay? What I don't appreciate sometimes though is the mindset that, you know, we can learn the information we need from graphs and from, you know, the stats that are coming forward. We all know that you can skew things to have what you want to be the end result based on what you were given, okay? Example being that you said, well, 85% of teachers said that we need this. Sure, 85% of teachers that, were willing to do the survey. So there's that missing component, and it was brought up that every student benefits from this. Well, that's not guaranteed. Okay, that's what our hope here is, that every student benefits from this, but that's not necessarily what might happen. It feels like we've been manipulated, okay? And I say that in the stance that when questions come rise of, well, when we send out the survey, if we send out a new survey, we're going to ask, well, do we want, your kids to be successful? Well, that's ridiculous. What parent isn't going to say, yes, I want them to be successful? We already know the answer to that. What we need is straightforward questions from the board to the parents that can give a straightforward answer back. And that might be the answer that everybody is happy with. We don't know that. Or it might be an answer that is contrary, and we need to figure out why and come to middle ground. But by trying to avoid the tough questions and trying to, steer this in a direction that one side wants and maybe the other side does or doesn't, isn't helpful to anybody. All it's doing is creating more conflict and more angst between people because you're dividing people. Okay. Secondly, I am well aware of the tremendous undertaking that our teachers take on every day when they come to school. Okay, it is a hard job where you wear a multitude of different hats, and I'm not discounting that in one shape or form. Recently, it was brought to light that my kid had, throughout the year, said numerous times that all my teacher does is yell in school. Okay. This escalated to the point that a month ago, my son came home and said, "Dad, it is torturous to be in school. All my teacher does is yell." Now, we have sat down with that teacher. We have sat down with the teacher and the principal. The end result was, okay, well, there are times that we have to raise our voice in class in order to get direction because, while your kid isn't causing the problem, that's the only way that we can, gain control of the classroom again. So maybe in the future, we just have him exit the class because it's better for him. Then he doesn't have to experience this. Okay. I raised my children such that when an adult is raising their voice, playtime is over. Okay. And the notion that I am backtracking on the things that I have instilled in my children to say that we don't raise our voice unless it is imminent and there is time for correction, it baffles my mind that that's how we're going to move forward with trying to have an instructive lesson. The school year is almost over, and I am praying that next year is better. With that being said, though, we have built a life here in this town. We love this town, and we just built, a new dream home, and everything is dandy and great. We are at the point with the board and how things are running in the school system that I'm ready to put things up for sale and move someplace different, because I am at my wit's end with you guys. Okay? Teaching isn't about raising your voice. Teaching isn't about, trying to form everybody into the same shell. It's about trying to give kids the ability to grow. And I don't know what happens or what needs to happen moving forward, but the idea that we're going to take them more out of the class, or we're not going to listen to what the parents have to say and just kind of go our own way because we believe that the stats that are coming through or the graphs that we can put forward in a certain manner that give us the same end result of what we want, that this is a beneficial thing, we're missing the point of coming together as a collective group. So I wanted it brought to light here that there are distinct problems that I see as a parent that moving forward, I think that this is only going to be exasperated by the continuing of this and maybe some changes that need to happen in the classroom setting so that we can get some of the kids that are rambunctious and out of control back, in hand here, because what we're doing right now isn't working, and to have a kid come home and say that it's torturous to even go to school is mind-boggling, to try and say the least. So I really hope you guys are hearing this.
Thanks, Craig. Anybody else care to be recognized? All right, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You guys have to stay.
Why do I gotta stay and sign stuff?
Yeah. Thanks for remembering.
Glad I could help you
Pat.
remember that.
Oh, you're not done.
Yeah.
The new clerk. Not really.
Nobody else is gonna use your name.
I said 10, you say 11.
I don't have any.
Why not?
So Shay, are you coming back next week or next month or no?